Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, the official podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. This month's topic is going to be photographs and movies and films at Walt Disney World. We're going to be taking a look back at different types of guidebooks and all sorts of things. So episode 95. And sitting in with me, as always, we've got the band back together here, just like the Blues Brothers. Coming in from Ohio, Mr. J.T. Cougar. Over the holidays, it's good to be back with everybody. And you're kind of back at work. And yeah, I had a little day off yesterday, but welcome back, sir.
Yeah, we're in the snow days, the cold days right now. Our first show of 2025.
Yeah.
And it's this is exciting because the camera shop, the developing film on property is kind of like a lost art. So this will be a trip down memory lane for some people, and for our younger listeners, something you've never experienced, nor will you ever.
That's right. They just don't know what these things are, but we are going to talk about them. So, and coming in from Florida and his temporary location, Hal, it's wonderful to have you back here on another full episode. I know you're still in flux, but it's really great to have you back. So maybe tell the little listeners welcome and how things are going for you.
Aloha. It is great to be back. We have a number from our insurance company, so we are getting ready to get a contractor and start fixing up the house. So we are about ready to start making some progress, which is really good.
You're going to make it all 220?
Yep, and that's it.
200 amp.
I really was expecting how to get on like the professor rigged up a podcasting rig out of two coconuts down there, and
yeah, that's
the kids are on a bike in the
I
back.
should have done.
Yeah, he's in a hut.
Pedal faster, Phoenix. Pedal faster.
Come on, we're
losing signal.
We need the internet. That's right.
Yeah, and as someone who spent too much money processing film during the 90s, this is a topic which is near and dear to my heart because I took a lot of pictures of Walt Disney World.
Yeah.
So.
There's a lot of stuff to talk about.
How many still photos do you think you developed of Walt Disney World? How? Do we think we broke 1,000?
I mean, I had a trunk that was 3 layers deep of prints. So it's somewhere between, I would say, 750 and 1,000 prints.
Wow.
Easily, yeah.
Did you save all those negatives? You know, they throw in the envelope.
I do have the. Yeah, I have the negatives still.
The negatives are what we need now because we could do a negative scanner and start scanning those in. That's what we'll
Todd,
do.
then I will start sending you the negatives rather than. I was getting ready actually to send Todd 4 or 5 boxes of prints, but
I was implying that we should get one, but I get. But no, it's a great. Actually, the printers, the photo scanners. I'm loaning it to somebody, but we should invest in a negative scanner, and we'll talk about a new machine we invested in actually in a little bit.
I wanted to thank everybody who donated to me. It was such a huge help to try to get us back established again, and really, I am overwhelmed by the response we got, and I cannot thank everybody enough. It was amazing. Nothing that I ever expected, and I want to thank everybody truly from the bottom of my heart. My entire family thanks you. So
awesome. All right, and another lover of photographs, our in-house slide scanner producer, cleaner upper extravaganza, Mr. Brian P. Miles. Welcome, Brian. How you doing this evening?
Greetings, salutations, and at the risk of angering Larry David, because it's the time period's past, Happy New Year.
Yeah,
Right.
there we go. There we go.
Here we are.
Brian and I got to see each other for a very, very short period of time.
We did. He and his son were down to visit Todd's dad, who lives about 7 minutes from me. And they got the whirlwind 90-minute cheesesteak and tour of Philadelphia.
We learned all about Joni on the pony.
Joni on a pony. She's,
Ben Franklin's grave. That was great. Brian's like, I can pull over right here, get out, run around the corner and look down, and that's Ben Franklin. Get back in the car. We got more to do.
That's exactly how it happened, too.
Exactly.
It's right over there.
No, the cheesesteak was awesome. We'd love to come down, and we're going to come down this summer and do more with you. And I know it was a short trip. It was good to see my dad, and that you got to go check out that restaurant store too. It's fun. We could get could probably get our space juice or whatever it was concentrate there.
Actually, when I get to Florida, the second bottle of peach concentrate's going in the garbage when we get down there.
It's growing.
I know the
now.
expiration date was 2024, so
We can't serve that.
No.
So. All right. Well, before we get on the main topic, photos and films and all sorts of great stuff. JT, let's open up the mailbag and see what we got this month. What do we got in there?
Got a few things. Kind of went into the archives a little bit, but also some current things. We did one of our most recent topics was burn bombs, but Joey wrote us, and he says he found, which I'm going to share some of these screenshots once we get the show notes going, an interesting guidebook from 1972. It is simply just called A Guidebook to Disney World, Florida. I'll send you guys a link so you can view it here. It's in our chat there, but it's very basic. Almost reminds me of Walt Disney World Made Simple, but 1972 by the Tip and Twinkle Incorporated. I do like this cover. It does have how to get there, where to stay, how to save time and money, and then plus the magic toll-free telephone number for making room reservations.
Oh.
right, because they still to this day don't have an 800 number.
No.
407 WDW, whatever it was, W Disney.
I like pages 4 through 5. What will it cost?
Yeah, I mean,
This is fantastic. Oh, the maps are phenomenally simple.
we're in Orlando. How do we get here?
Here.
Lots of different things. They have pricing in there. Yeah, the maps are a crude drawing almost. But yeah, very, very interesting guidebook. It's actually for sale. And he sent us this link to an auction. But yeah, very cool. Thanks, Joey. Appreciate that look. I like the simplicity of that cover. And
All right, Todd, I think you need to buy it. And
I really like it. This needs deeper investigation and reading.
The price came up to $1 at the time. Is that a palm tree on the cover, or
it
weird
almost looks like a bird or
looks like
a whale
like Jonathan
with a claw.
Livingston Seagull to me.
A whale tail with a claw coming out of it.
Yeah, it's a unicorn.
There's 2 of them too. We could spread the love. So
I think it's a bird or a palm tree.
I'm confirming and paying.
Or possibly fallopian tubes. I can't tell exactly.
It's very interesting. So thank you, Joey. We appreciate that, and we'll if we end up getting this, we'll definitely do a live commentary on a future episode, though.
Well, the credit card's processing. Thank you
looking
for
to see-
shopping. We got it.
Oh,
it's coming our way.
I was looking to see if one of the pages that was in the ad here had the 800 number, so we could call it live on the show. But
oh, it just told me sold 1 minute ago. I can't get it. Look at that.
Ha 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 ha.
I do wonder what else Tip and Twinkle came out with, because that's a
Tip and Twinkle of Roanoke, Virginia. Let's see what the old database says.
And while he's doing that, the maps inside remind me of the maps that were actually in the very first Disney
really
newspaper style publication before the guidebooks. So he probably just kind of copied it from that.
I like the one that says the whole property. It says theme park, the Magic Kingdom. And then we have Bay Lake with, this is interesting. They have Discovery Island #2 marked as Blackbeard's Island.
So that would have been, first opening year. That's what they called it before anything was out there.
They've even marked number 12 here is the Stoleport.
Oh, there we go.
But there's nothing in the picture, just a white space.
Evidently, Tip and Twinkle made novelty items quite a bit, like funny signs for your bathrooms about the toilet and official mafia member signs, I'm assuming after The Godfather came out. However, it says it was a liquid gem cleaner under the trademark, and the trademark expired in December of 2000, so we could renew that and just make it,
Could be the new Tip and Twinkle.
wait,
That's
a little more
fantastic.
here. Hang on. The Tip and Twinkle was a Roanoke, Virginia novelty company owned by Charles Fenstermacher Clark, 1915 to 1988. Poor one.
Oh.
Finster?
He is perhaps remembered for his nom de plume Colonel Beauregard Horse Pasture, late of the Confederate Air Force, and his 1961 Colonel Horse Pasture's Guidebook and Dixie Dictionary, written in stereotypically illiterate Southern dialect. Apologies for all of you below the Mason-Dixon line listening to us. When pressed on the shtick in a 1970 interview by the Roanoke Times, he said, "The Southerners get a kick out of it, and the Northerners do believe we talk that way."
Okay.
And this is all in a write-up on a United States of Dixie map that he, placemat map that I guess he sold to Southern restaurants so that the Northerners would get a hoot out of it, as they say.
Well,
It's got funny things on it, like the state where Hal lives is called Flawda, Flawda. Georgia is Jawja, and you can figure out the rest of it. So that's the folks who wrote this guide. I can't wait to get it now.
We got that from Joey. Next up, this is a question for the pros. This is from Les. Les says he's got a question. He was wondering who might be able to assist him. In episode 29, about the land, we mentioned that the original boats of Listen to the Land had no canopy, but were eventually changed to include a roof. He wants to know where we got that information because he's never seen a picture of an open-top boat, nor has he found anyone to confirm this. He found a photo of a boat with a roof on the flume while the greenhouses were still under construction, so a roofless boat would have had to have been in the early stages of planning. Just curious if he has any info. We have any info about that?
That's a really good question, and how I thought they were always had roofs. Where did we?
I don't remember any of us saying that it didn't have.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Clearly we did. This is like a fight with your wife where 8 years ago you said this. I'm sorry.
Because I thought we said it always had the rain, and that's why it had the roof.
Right, and the rain in the rainforest scene was
would
always
cascade over you, the boat. Right?
Yeah, it was always dripping too. Like you get off and you get a drip on you. So, we're gonna have to go. If you remember the episode where we did that, that would be
said
good.
29.
We're gonna have to go back and see if we have audio transcripts here of that. Maybe that could have just been us with an error,
or. Yeah, who knows? I'd have to go listen to it again. I do not remember what I said 8 years ago. So
interesting.
So it was episode 29. We did one part on that, and we did all about the pavilion. At about the 47-minute mark, Brian said they were originally open, but then once the Imagineers decided to add real water and real rain, they decided to add the canopies. And Todd added that he felt the canopies added a more intimate feel, and it drew your eyes outward instead of upward.
Right. So the answer to his question would be that was in the design phase, it never operated without a canopy.
Yeah.
Because there was real water and wind in there when the ride opened.
Yeah, he was asking for a source on it. I don't know if we...
Somewhere along the lines, one of Rowley's books or so,
Yeah. Something like that. But yeah, it's definitely in there, and we... it sounded like you were leading that episode, Brian. So.
Wasn't me.
That was the other Brian.
Different guy.
All right, next up, Sylvia. Sylvia wrote us, and she's reaching back. Episodes 56.5, Typical Pylons, a chat with Gene, another one of Brian's neighbors. She said it coincided perfectly with a recent visit to her parents' house. While looking through some old photos, she came across a small stack of photos from her parents' first trip in 1985. She was surprised and elated to see these pictures existed. In the stack was a picture of her dad standing in front of the pylons. Towards the end of the podcast, Todd mentioned the joy that the fountains have brought and the symbol of the park that it has become. The sentiment couldn't be more true. So I wanted to share this photo as well as some others of my parents' 1985 trip. So thank you, Sylvia. We appreciate that. It's a good picture of the fountain, the blue bricks, the whole thing. We'll put that one in the show notes because it's definitely a good one. And going off of this episode, I mean, these old photos are just amazing to see. Love that. So, alrighty, and I got one more here. Actually, two more. One decently long one and one quick one. This is from Karen. Karen says, "Hi guys, I got this note from a friend of mine. Curious if you've ever stumbled on something related to this and would appreciate any input you have." Her friend said, "I know this will be hard for you to believe, but I think it's true. My grandfather, Gerald Liberty, lived in Florida with his wife, Marion." Gerald and Marion Liberty, Brian, if you're going to search while I talk here. They had quite an orchid operation. So they were growing orchids in Florida. It was a hobby that grew into a business. The story they shared with me is when the Contemporary opened, Gerald got contracted to provide blooming orchids to it. He'd fill his station wagon with blooming plants, drive them over, install them, and bring back those that needed nurturing. I don't know if this is true or not, but he was quite an entrepreneur, and there was no reason to misrepresent it to me. So we're going to dig here. Do you guys remember orchids indoors or outdoors at the Contemporary? Or
I was going to say the one thing that would make sense to me is if just over the years the story got confused between the Contemporary and the Polynesian, because the Polynesian always did have live orchids in the waterfall area, and those would have had to have been changed out fairly regularly. So that absolutely would make sense to me.
Well, the Gerald Liberty Orchids of Fort Meade, Florida, won the 12th annual Central Florida Orchid Society show in Winter Park in April of 1975. So, just so you know.
I'm waiting for you to do the Office. And apparently he liked bicycling, but not so much anymore. Oh my gosh!
I don't have any more information except for that.
Yeah, that's all I found as well. But we'll, it could have been the Polynesian. It seems true, right? I mean, all those local little deals and working with the people that, actually knew what they were doing instead of Disney deciding to open an entire center of orchids and not let the profits go to anybody else. It seems like something they would done back then.
Right, and it certainly took them a while to get everything spun up to take care of all of the plants and things that they would need, right? Which they did eventually when they built out all the, the nurseries and whatnot. But I can definitely see them subbing that out at the beginning.
100%. I mean,
orchids are hard to take care of,
right?
Too, notoriously.
These guys were busy building shrubs and lawns and mountains, and they didn't have time to be doing orchids. When they got an orchid guy right here in Fort Meade, Florida.
Well, thank you, Karen. Hopefully that helped you out. But if anybody hears anything or knows of Gerald's orchids, or maybe you still have one, who knows? Let us know. All right, last one. Pat Smith says, "Hello, I found your podcast a few months ago after reading Fox Nolte's Boundless Realms book and looking for podcasts they were interviewed on. I really enjoyed that episode. I checked out a few others and decided to go back to episode 1 and start from the beginning. Pat's up to episode 23 of this month, so it's been great. Well, we'll see in about 70 or so episodes, Pat. You'll catch up to this here. But Pat says at that point we hadn't discussed how we knew each other. And Brian wrote him, but we just wanted to throw that in there for Pat. Most of us met on the social medias. I started writing for Todd. Brian started talking to Todd about films and how just has everything and anything we'd want to know about it. So it kind of blossomed like an orchid from there. So that's the quick version, Pat. But we wish you Godspeed on your journey through all the episodes of 23 to 95.
Yeah, it's amazing how it all comes back to film and Twitter. I mean, that's
Yeah, I mean,
That's really what it does.
We all met through Twitter.
Yep. Well,
all right. Anything else in the bag? Is that
no,
it?
that's it. That's all I
it.
got.
All right.
If you have a letter, you want to know something, or share something with us, podcast at retrowdw.com. We try to get to all the messages, respond, share some on the air, and even go back and forth between old ones and new ones. So don't worry if we don't get to you. We try to get to them all. So thanks for writing, everybody.
Thank you, JT. Before we get to the main topic, gentlemen, I have something that I have been meaning for like a year and a half to share with you. I'd let you hear. And Brian and I did a little test to make sure that you could hear my audio. I wanted to take you back to, this is season 2, episode 15, not of us. Not by the way, this is a television show from the 70s. And Walt Disney World is referenced. And in the episode, you see the Look magazine. Brian's nodding his head. He knows where I'm going, but I'm going to play this little. I think he knows where I'm going. You see the not only the Look magazine that has Mickey on the cover, or is it the Life magazine? I think it's the Look magazine. And then later on the episode, the second part, you're going to hear the main character is holding the early preview edition guide with the yellow back on it. And it's really cool that early Walt Disney World stuff was making its way into primetime television. And what always interested me of this is that, you know, we're talking about film today. This was very early video, but it was interesting because I thought, wow, was this a placement? But when you hear the clip, I'm not too sure it was a placement, but it still in a way advertises Walt Disney World. So I have 2 clips for you. Here we go.
Yeah, that's swell. Hey, look, sit down in your chair, because I want to show you something in the magazine I found there. There's a whole article in here, read it, on Disney World here. Oh, look at this. Here's the first page. See, Mickey Mouse leading the grand parade. Huh? Ain't that cute? Oh, yeah. Listen, don't be putting down Walt Disney. I'm going to tell you something. There's a guy named Billy Hartfeld who works with me down a plant. Now, this is a guy that's been all over the world. He's traveled everywhere, seen everything and done everything. He's got the tattoos to prove it. A guy like Billy Hartfeld tells me that he wants to go to Disney World to die.
On this trip?
No, not on this trip.
Oh, good.
Eat it. Look, McNabb got this other brochure here. Another Disney brochure I want to show you. Sit down in a chair, huh? This has got pictures of the most beautiful things in here. Oh, wait till I show you. There's one of them in here, an all-bear band.
A naked band at Disney World?
No, Edith. You know, bears like brown bears, grizzly bears.
Well, I hate bears.
Yeah, but they ain't real bears, Edith. Look.
I hate all bears. Take it away.
I'm just trying to show you something.
Stifle.
Oh, times have changed.
Talk about the divide there. I mean, it existed even back in the 70s. There were Disney adults and people who judge Disney adults, and Edith sounds like a judger.
She does
of Disney adults.
But I love that Archie's friend is going to die there. Like this,
Yeah,
it was
been all over
already
the world. He's got the tattoos to prove it.
Season 2. What year would that have been, Brian?
1972.
So we're just
72, 70. It would have just opened.
Do you think this was placement, or was it just added in?
No.
I think it was just so popular that they.
Yeah, I mean, back then, product placement, I don't really think was a common thing. You know, that it would just, pop culture was pop culture, and it was woven into things. In fact, I've been watching on the Game Show Network. They're running the mid-1980s Price is Right, which I know I share clips with you guys every now and then of a prize that comes out because they're always giving away Disney World trips and staying at the Hotel Royal Plaza.
Yeah.
But in the showdowns, when they present the showcases in this time frame, they keep using, like when it's Disney World's in there, it's all of a sudden the whole showcase can be set to the Main Street Electrical Baroque Hoedown. I have seen them use the Star Trek theme in like 7 or 8 different ones over the course of a year when it's space themed. And I know they did not license that music. Like there's no way they paid licensing for that music. And so it's funny to watch it now and like be like, they'd never get away with that now. Like
long before the old Model T, round about the turn of the century, folks discovered a barrel of fun, taking pictures by the light of the sun. Smile, hug, look at the camera, hold your breath and say cheese. Cheese, little did they realize back then they were making memories.
All right, well, it's time for this month's main topic. We said we'd be going into photographs, films, slides, all sorts of great stuff. Brian, I know you've put some notes together and did some research to carry us through this episode on your back, so to speak. But we've all got exciting things here to talk about. I want to talk about the new Frankenstein machine here, and I got to show you guys the latest machine and setup that we've got for film transfer because it's better than what people
custom built.
Custom built
in-house.
This thing,
Retro WDW in the Lake Buena Vista.
And look at this, guys. I even got something new. I got something here called, see that?
Film Guard.
Film Guard. This is a cleaner. It's a lubricant, and it also fills in little scratches. So make sure that your films are all high
silky,
quality.
Buttery smooth.
That's right.
Does it make Mound's Julian fries?
It does not make Julian fries, but it has an odd, oily yet pleasant smell. It's like they tried to put something in it to make it smell good, but it really doesn't. So
there was a product called, and I know it's still out there. I may misname it. I think it was called Vitafilm.
Vitafilm.
And you would take whole reels of 8mm or 16mm and actually pour the stuff in the reel and just put the lid on and let it sit for 6 months or 3 months. And it would do 2 things. If you started to get the vinegar syndrome, it may rescue the film. But it would also do the same thing. It would restore and lubricate and make your film less brittle. And
there's another product out there that when I was doing research that said was suitable for soaking. This one isn't particularly suitable for soaking, but there is another one out there.
Todd was holding up a spray bottle.
Spray bottle, yeah. So what you do is...
the kind you shoot a cat with.
Exactly. And you put it on a little rag, a little cotton rag, and you pull the film. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. But Brian, kick us off here. We're getting very excited about emulsion and exposure, developer, fixer.
You're what we call in the weeds.
I am. I'm already in the weeds.
Terms.
I'm sorry.
Well, your family is visiting pre-1971. You might have visited Disneyland. As you heard in the clip Todd shared with us, Archie Bunker and Edith Bunker were, at least one of them was excited about visiting Disney World when it opened in 1971. And how did you remember your trip? Well, we all know, or most of you know, the famous story of Walt having a souvenir program for you to take home, which was what, a quarter? I think it was a quarter, right?
Something
Did
like
they
that,
charge for that? Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
maybe
this one
even
was
10 cents.
Well,
might have been 10 cents, yeah.
It might have been 10 cents, less than,
Polaroid and GFA were
well, the original one was one you paid for,
yeah,
that you could take home from Disneyland. By the time they opened Walt Disney World, we'll get to this. Well, it's the whole reason we're here. Retro WDW and the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society started as a result of slides and movie film, and of Walt Disney World in its early decades, and so because video cameras and digital cameras and those kinds of things didn't exist back then, your memories of your trip were on film. And you either, home movies had been around in 16mm form since the 1920s, I think. But photographs and slides were a big main takeaway from your vacation. You brought them home and you showed them to people and you made albums out of them. And I'm explaining all this there's a lot of people saying, well, yeah, I know that. And then you're like, well, have you talked to like a Gen Zer or a Gen Alpha and try to describe this stuff? Because they look at you like you're describing a buggy whip. Like it just, it boggles their mind that was it. And we kind of chatted a bit on some early episodes about what it cost for a roll of film back then and to develop it. But the cameras were unwieldy. It's in Walt Disney World's early days. The pocket Instamatic was not as common as people having these big cameras that were in cases that they would have to take in there. And you'd usually have some film, but if you're really wowed, like Archie Bunker was, about Walt Disney World and all that you were seeing, maybe you brought a roller to a film and you wanted to take more pictures. Or maybe you showed up with your camera and you didn't have a battery or you forgot to buy film. Walt Disney World had you covered. In Disneyland, Walt Disney World, there was a camera store right after you walked through the gates. There was always a camera shop. And so that's kind of where the story should start, is that at both the original Disneyland and then when they built the Florida parks, the camera concession was just inside the gate so that as soon as you walked in and were wowed by Town Square, you could go to take those first pictures of the castle and the buildings in Town Square. And if you were running low, you knew where to go. You'd go right into the camera store. It was right there on Town Square. So in the Magic Kingdom today, if you were looking for the camera shop, you wouldn't find it. But for 4 plus, close to 5 decades, the camera center was the corner store on Main Street in Town Square when you walked in on your right, facing the castle. It is now the candy store. It's expanded part of the candy store, but for 40 plus years, that was your first stop to pop in and buy camera supplies, camera straps, the little plastic tubes you would put your used film rolls in and unused film rolls. Film, anything that you needed to buy to operate your photography for the day. You could also buy cameras. Mm-hmm. You could also rent cameras, which we'll touch on. But Disney itself was not in the camera business. In each instance, they would find a sponsor who generally, was the main purveyor of the stores who would sell their wares in those stores. That's not how it started in Disneyland, though, is it, Hal?
No, that's correct. There's a really interesting story about a gentleman named Art Linkletter, who was a famous television host at the time. And when Walt was looking for somebody to host the Disneyland, inaugural special, he was also a personal friend. He went to Art Linkletter and said, "Hey, can you host this show for me? But the only thing is that we really don't have a lot to pay you. We could get you scale." And Art Linkletter was actually a very shrewd businessman. He said, "I'll tell you what, Walt. Instead of paying me, give me the film concessions for Disneyland." So brilliant. If anybody wants to buy film, it's like, I'll be the person that sells the film. And so for 10 years, Art Linkletter personally held the film concessions for Disneyland and made money off of every single solitary scrap of film that was sold there. In fact, there's a quote that he has where he said, "The Kodak people once said to me, 'Mr. Linkletter, you own the world's largest automatic film vending machine, Disneyland.'" So he made a good bit of money out of that until finally, Disney actually worked a real sponsorship deal with, I think, Kodak.
Congratulations, Art Linkletter. When I was a kid, what he was famous for was in the 50s, and then back then he used to host, I think Kids Say the Darndest Things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a big show for him that in the early days of television, where you would just sit and ask kids questions on camera, and they would say the kinds of things that kids say. And everybody would sit at home with their tiny little 9-inch black and white screen and just guffaw. at what the kids were saying.
I just read one where he asked a kid what animal he would be, and the kid was like, "I want to be an octopus because it has 8 testicles."
I wonder if they had to bleep that out.
No, I guess that was okay.
That was okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
But that, and then in my youth, I remember him most because he was on the Craftmatic adjustable bed commercials.
Oh my gosh, I completely
Smart
forgot
Linklater.
about that. Yeah.
The Craftmatic adjustable bed
my
and
gosh.
the chair. What the hell was the lounge chair called that was also like a Craftmatic? It would
A lounge chair.
It would raise and lower. It
it
was
would
like a Barco lounger. Yeah.
but
The one that you could get out of, right? You could.
they were more. They were around until the 90s. I think the company finally went out of business, but it was an American company, started in the 50s, and the chairs would, kind of rotate you down, and they had heat and massage in some of the models.
Is it the contour chair?
That's it, the contour
Contour.
chair lounge.
And you get like a television or a VCR or something as a bonus when you bought it.
You can run that commercial in here, but yes, you could get a microwave oven, a VCR, a 19-inch color TV back then was if you bought the. So imagine how expensive the chairs were.
That had to have been.
We're just going to
the
throw
most
in a TV.
expensive chair ever.
But actually, if you search on eBay and stuff for like contour chair lounges, there are still some out there for sale. From like the 50s and 60s. Like these things were durable. But anyway, yeah, that was Art Linkletter. And there are tons of Art Linkletter commercials on YouTube if you'd like to familiarize yourself with a man who made a fortune on film. He was also the last guy alive, I think. They were rolling him out to events for Disneyland's 50th, right? Like he was still around at Disneyland's 50th. And he died he was in his late 90s, I think, when he finally passed away. But he continued to do the Disney thing whenever they called him. So he dust himself off and show up.
Yeah.
So each of the parks that they built from Disneyland on, one of the first shops in there in the entrance area would be the camera store. So, as I said, in Magic Kingdom, it was the Camera Center. And we'll go over the sponsors in a bit. In Epcot, it was the Camera Center also, right? Right on the right. It was that great sign for years and years, for decades, until they finally took it away. But right to the right of Spaceship Earth, when you walked in, there was Gateway Gifts was on your left, and the Camera Center was on your right. Camera Center's still there, but we'll talk about what it is now. In Disney MGM Studios, it was the Dark Room, which was one of the. It was in the shape of a camera.
It's such a perfect Art Deco. The window was the lens, which was just fantastic.
Yep. And so the Dark Room was there. And
what is that now? Is this part of one of the stores, right?
Well, it is, and we'll get to what they all are now.
Oh boy. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting
like
ahead.
the sad ending of the stores as we talk about the stores. And then in Animal Kingdom, it was the Garden Gate Gifts, which I think is still there, but it's the main entrance gifts shop at Animal Kingdom, and they were your primary stop for camera supplies and camera services.
Gotcha.
And when the Magic Kingdom opened, a company called GAF was the photo sponsor. And from before Walt Disney World opened, an famous actor named Henry Fonda was the spokesperson for GAF. He recorded commercials for them, and they did one specific commercial pre-opening promoting Walt Disney World. And they had a Walt Disney World starter pack where you got a camera and you got a Mickey Mouse pin and you got some film and a bunch of other stuff in a box, along with a souvenir guidebook for Walt Disney World. And so they were the ones. So one of the, and I don't know how this was done at Disneyland in the latter half of during the 60s and all, but the guide maps from the time the Magic Kingdom opened were sponsored by the photo sponsor. So for the first 7 years that the Magic King was open, the camera center had the GAF logo on it, presented by GAF, and all of the maps that they handed you or guides. Sometimes they weren't maps. Sometimes they handed out these little guidebooks that had, almost like little brochures that would tell you about each land and where the restaurants were and where the restrooms were, etc. Were sponsored by GAF, so that you got them for free. But they had the GAF logo, they had GAF advertisements inside of them, and they had camera tips, giving you, some photo taking tips as to where you may best want to position yourself and how you want to frame stuff. And I know Todd has a guide from Kodak along those lines that he wants to mention. But in addition to that, they also designated there would be little signs throughout the park, and this is a GAF photo spot or a key photographic area. And we know them, people of our age kind of tend to remember Kodak photo spots being around as being a place that was denoted where, oh, this is a spot where you should stop and take a picture. And the favorite slides for us to find are when people took pictures of the actual photo spot sign with whatever was behind it, instead of standing where the sign was to take the photo, which is what the sign was really telling you to do. On the subject of the sponsors, before we kind of go back and forth on the stuff I just talked about, Polaroid, GAF got out of the consumer camera business in 1977 or 78. So even though most of the sponsorships at Disney were for 10 years, it didn't make any sense for GAF to continue to be the sponsor since they didn't sell their products. And we did find at least one article that said they only sold GAF film in those stores. We found an alternate article that said there were many different types of film, and we can talk a little bit about the film types in a bit, but GAF got out of the business. Polaroid took over, and so for a span of about 3 or 4 years, the shop on Main Street was sponsored by Polaroid. The maps that were handed out were sponsored by Polaroid. All of the photo spots became Polaroid photo spots. And then when Disney was building Epcot, they signed the deal with Kodak to sponsor the Journey into Imagination Pavilion. So when Epcot opened, everything in Epcot was Kodak. There were Kodak photo spots. There was Kodak film in the camera center. And eventually, it was not long, there was a period of time where Kodak and Polaroid coexisted on property. But eventually, Polaroid, by 1983 or 84, was out completely. And Kodak had the monopoly on the Disney concession with their sponsorship. Now, before we get into camera rentals and anything else, anything you wanted to jump in down there on?
I wanted to add on the site, we have a map of the GAF photo trail. And you go to the different spots, and they show you where it's at. And I do like that they say the photo tips on the next few pages will assist you in bringing the Walt Disney World and the rest of your vacation back home with you in pictures. And they say if you need further advice or assistance, a staff of photo experts is ready to assist you at the GAF camera shop.
Is this what you're looking at, JT? Because we have this one scanned. Is this the one?
Yes, that is it.
Yeah,
and there's little markers of the different places. There's one by the Speedway. There's a lot around the rivers of America. It's very picturesque. I don't know why they would ever get rid of that.
They should get rid of it.
Just fill it in. It's really
there's and like you said, the it was always like do I take a picture of the sign? Do I step around this? But they do add too. These spots have been carefully researched and selected as the best locations for taking memorable pictures. Each one is marked, provided in the trail. The sign provides useful information for colorful and exciting movies and still pictures.
Oh, I've got so much to say here.
You don't like the research.
No, I love the research. I think that's really good. No, I'm just looking through these guides, and I cannot wait till it's my turn to go through all of these, all the technical stuff here. There's so much good stuff. So, Brian, I did want to point out, correct me if we're going to talk about this a little bit, what else they sold at some of these shops. Not only your film, you can pick up these guides. We have mentioned it before, the souvenir films. Did you have a place for that, or should I talk about it?
Yeah, go ahead. But okay. I mean, we do have the Panaview slides and souvenir films mentioned here, but
is that
now's as good a time as any?
All right. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about in this episode too are the souvenir films and Panaview souvenir slides. Now, what was interesting about this, and we've kind of mentioned this on previous episodes before, some people did not bring a camera to their vacation because, as we talked about earlier, it was very expensive. And sometimes you got down there and you were like, oh, I'd really like to bring home a picture of this. My camera won't take a good night shot. And we're putting the slideshow together for Bobby and Irma back home. And you're like, oh, look, there's professional slides made. Or you were like, we've seen before. We've seen people down there with their home movies and they want a night shot, or they want something they couldn't go into attraction and film because it didn't work, or they just wanted to bring home a souvenir film. They would bring that home, either edit it with their own film or put together. When I'm talking film here, I'm talking home movie film. So we have a lot of those on our site as well as on our YouTube collection. So if you search souvenir film, and also Brian has the entire Panaview series, which a lot of people have them, and they've restored them over the years. We're not the only ones that have it. Look on eBay, Panaview Disney World, and you'll come up with thousands of hits. What's interesting about the stuff is none of it was ever created for longevity. It was all created with the cheapest medium, the cheapest dyes, the cheapest processing, to get those films and those slides home so that you would display them with your friends. We've previously talked about how that was a form of advertising. You actually paid them to advertise for them by buying these and bringing them home. But they really were to supplement your vacation and show what that magical picture. I guess what you could attribute today. When you do what's the photo thing called now? I can't even remember. The photo pass. Photo pass. Yeah. Okay. You ever log into that? Not only do you have your pictures on the ride, but you also have the studio shots and the special shots and the professional shots that you can download and put it into your digital album. It's the same concept.
Because nobody's that good of a photographer, at least back. I equate it to the whole, what's it cost to get 3 shots in, and you don't know what they're going to look like when you get home. They're 3 blown shots, and you spent $10 on them.
Right.
Or you buy the slide, and there you go. My dad always used to tell that to us. We had 35 millimeter, and we'd take a picture, and he'd be like, what are you taking a picture of that for? Just go buy a postcard for 25 cents. He goes, it's a lot better than your picture you took.
Yeah. But I took, and my mom would always take 2 shots of everything too. And,
you got to get that to make sure we got it.
Make sure we got it, just in case one of them doesn't come out. That was in case one doesn't come out.
People still do that.
People still do. I'll take 2.
Take a bunch. Yeah. Just in case.
The interesting thing about was a couple of things to add on that, Todd. First off, GAF was the producer of the Panaview slides.
Oh, they were. Okay.
Yeah, they were GAF Panaview slides that were sold in the parks. And if you've seen the Viewmasters that were of the Magic Kingdom when it opened and Walt Disney World, they were also manufactured by GAF. So they sold the Panaview slides and the professional stuff there, even though Panaview was... GF did that all over the country, by the way. And the souvenir slide sets, that was one of their big businesses, was selling those. You go to the Grand Canyon and they'll sell you a 10 slide set. I remember having a conversation with my sister years back, and I asked her something about the pictures that she took on vacation. And she looked at me and she said, I don't take pictures of scenery. I only take pictures of people, of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, that's brilliant, because there is nothing more boring than 25 years later finding a picture of here's a mountain.
The mountain looks the same as it did.
I have thrown away more carousels of slides of just nothing but the wilderness, and that come with auctions that I win that I just look at. What is this? This is, there's 150 slides of trees here. Like, who's looking at this stuff?
It's all a scam to capture the memories.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and I'm thinking how much the guy spent to develop all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my goodness. But yeah, that's one of the things that one of the things that's in the guides there we were talking about. Tells you to, frame people in your slides and make sure they're standing in front of the castle, and a picture of the castle. There's a billion of those, but a picture of Hal and a monkey standing in front of the castle. Now that's something.
Something you don't see every day.
Yeah.
How did you ever go there with a monkey? I mean,
no, I never. I do not recall.
Okay, just checking if that was just
yeah.
If it really was something we'd want.
It's photo worthy.
It is photo worthy.
It would be.
If anybody has a small pet monkey that we could borrow,
a service monkey.
Service monkey, yes.
Well,
not trunk monkey. We don't want a trunk monkey.
Birnbaum says, when shooting people, remember that the larger the subject appears in the picture, the more interesting it will be.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I got to get my reading glasses on.
And they also say, don't shoot into the sun.
Shut up about the sun. Shut up about the sun.
You open the worm here.
The can of worms?
The can of worms. Sorry.
The tequila worm?
You've opened the can of worms here. All right. These are the GAF photo tips. First of all, you want to start shooting. Before you start shooting, check your equipment. Is it clean? Is it functioning properly? Are your batteries fresh? I mean, I guess that goes for today. We just kind of scribble our sleeve across our phone and we check our battery level, so that's okay. Do you want color or black and white? Prints or slides? Indoor film or outdoor? I love in indoor, it has in parentheses tungsten. Nobody knows on this podcast what that means because it's the color of the light. Is your film fresh? Do you have enough? Okay, so JT, here are your tips. Hold your camera steady. Watch the focus. Don't block the lens. How was it great? Oh, Grandma always had her finger, right?
Put it back or the lens cap was on. Because some of those cameras, the cap could be on and the viewfinder would still be there.
Exactly, and you wouldn't even know because the viewfinder was separate from the lens, which people can't even comprehend. Compose the pictures. Let the surroundings tell a story. And it's so funny. There's a picture of this woman and this guy holding a popcorn bucket. In the first picture, it could have been shot anywhere, including the backyard at home. The second picture, taken in the same area, captures the old-fashioned atmosphere of Main Street, USA, and it's zoomed out. Which these are fine. These are good tips. Mm-hmm. Watch out for unwanted subjects such as trees and branches,
or Hal
with the monkey. Yep.
Photo bombers.
Now this is
a foam head. Who's that guy?
Watch your distance to subject. Now, here's two here. Action shots are better than posed. And I don't know, Brian, this one's going against you here. It says some pictures don't need the family.
Oh. Well, they're selling film, though. They want you to shoot and shoot and shoot.
Of course.
This is video. We just keep shooting all day.
Here's the key to it, the very last line. It's better for storytelling back home. And that's something I want to get into a little bit about storytelling and some of the technology. I'll hold off. I don't know if the tips... Let's see. Here's Kodak.
What's interesting about this, though, is like when we get those slide sets, you can tell back then who knew what they were doing and who didn't.
Absolutely.
100%.
And it's funny because it's like it's turned into now that everybody has a camera in their pocket. It's almost like the whole, there was only so many people that were good on radio, and now anybody can start a radio show.
Yep.
Look at us.
Now, this one's interesting. This one goes into actual, let's see, tips for better Walt Disney World pictures, because we'll get into movies later. Okay, so Polaroid, make sure your camera's clean, make sure your film is fresh, check the batteries.
Birnbaum has to keep the camera clean, blow the dust off.
Yep.
Fresh film. They say to check the expiration date on the bottom of the box and keep your film cool.
Oh, you don't want that hot.
Oh yeah, you don't want hot film.
And if you're going through the X-ray scanner, make sure you have an X-ray proof box, right?
Is that a thing?
It was.
Wait, where would that expose it? Like
if you
the airport, or
a lot of people did not want to carry their film through or put it on the luggage in the fear of losing it, especially on their way back, right, where you've got all this undeveloped film.
Oh, it's so nerve-wracking to think about. You shot 5 rolls on vacation.
Exactly.
And then, you
don't have it developed yet, right? So people would companies made these X-ray proof type. I don't know what they were lined with, canisters or also bags, right? And you load your film in there, or you would say, "Can you please take it out?" Like TSA would allow it to go around it wasn't TSA back then,
airport
but security, would let you go around the X-ray machine.
You just hand it to the guy. Here, this is my camera bag.
A lot of it was more fearful. 7
rolls of film and 1 bomb and 3 guns in there. Please don't look in it.
Exactly.
I'm taking this plane to Cuba.
DB Cooper's on board. We've got.
Don't ruin the film, though.
That's right. Yeah, we'll take all the pictures of them. What's interesting is, though, I don't think it really was a threat to commercial film or film that an individual would use. We were talking like that would be like my dad used photographic equipment for making plates for the printing presses and stuff, and he had said that there are certain types of film that would react more to the X-ray. So it was kind of a marketing yet protection ploy. People didn't
I
really
will tell you, Todd, I actually have experience with this.
All right, this is great because I never did. It went through, but how? Tell us the story.
So I shot. I don't remember what the trip was, but I shot on 35, like regular, and put it through the X-ray machine, and I got lines across across the negatives that showed up on the prints.
So was this post-exposure or pre-exposure?
Yes, post-exposure.
Post-exposure. So I wonder if it was okay going through.
This is how Marie Curie discovered radiation to begin with, by having lines appear on film that was in a drawer next to uranium. So this is real deal.
So I wonder if it was certain types of films that were more. Anyway, you can put your camera through your current camera.
I think it's one of those. Like anything, it's like, what are the chances of a cosmic ray going through an astronaut on a space station? It's
right.
Like, you can't calculate it, but you line the space station just in that instance, just in case that happens.
Right.
And that's the same thing. What direction that particular burst of radiation goes into is a crapshoot. I got unlucky. So
interesting. So, all right. Well, I stand a little bit corrected on that. I thought it was more of a, okay. So, JT, back to the tips here. Just want to make sure we get the Polaroid ones in here to make sure. Here's a new one. Stand so that the lighting on the subject comes from behind you or from the side. If sun is shining into your eyes and the camera's electric eye, the scene will probably come out too dark. Use a flash. Don't attempt a picture closer than about 4 feet. This is interesting. This is the object. This is the opposite of what GAF was telling you. Try to fill the viewfinder with as much of the subject as possible. The larger the subject, the more interesting your pictures will be. Keep the background simple and hold the camera steady. Gently squeeze the shutter button. Do not punch the button. So don't punch.
Do not taunt Happy Fun Ball.
Exactly. It may explode.
I wonder how much of that is due to the nature of the Polaroid film versus the.
Oh, that's an excellent
versus
point.
The regular
the button
film.
on the Polaroid was more of a...
It was.
And we might actually have to stop for a second at some point and explain the difference in all these different film types that were available.
I think that is a perfect thing because I got something on flash bulbs here. So, why don't you take... I will take flash. Do you want to take different film and the concept of film? We should have done this at the beginning, but let's talk about film and the cameras, the different formats, and flashes.
We are losing so many listeners.
Yeah,
right
let's
now.
let's keep this under 4 minutes total.
This is
here,
exciting. No, we're going down a rabbit hole. When I have a rabbit hole, I'm going down.
We'll start with just what were you shooting? You didn't have your iPhone with you or your Android phone, so what were you shooting on? When Walt Disney World opened, there were a couple of formats of consumer grade film that were common for people to have. One was called 110. It was a very, very very tiny cartridge.
Looked like a little car.
Yeah, it did look like a little car. That you would. I mean, it was probably no more than 2 inches long by maybe a ½ inch tall, with reels on the 2 sides and plastic in between, and a hole in the middle that would have the number of what frame you were shooting. And there would be a clear lens in the back of your camera where you could look through and see the little number. So when you advance the film with a little crank, you could say, oh, I'm on shot number 2, I'm on shot number 3. And those would make 4x6 prints. It was the normal format. A slightly older film that was still working at that time was called 126. That was a bigger cartridge, and it would give you a square print that usually had like a white outline around it. And then later on, by the mid 70s, they ended up doing full prints when they'd have usually like a rounded edge around the corners. And you can see on some of those early ones, the paper that they used for some reason has more of a texture to it.
Yeah.
Rather than flat.
It scans very poorly.
Yes,
right. Which is
does,
what a weird thing to do because it has all these pits in the photo.
And it just doesn't hold up well either. Those are the pictures in my thousands of family photos. Those are the ones that they're very dull when you scan them. And there was no gloss or anything on them.
126 came out prior to 110. 126 was 1963, 1972 was 110. So that's why a lot of those older construction photos from 69 and 70 are all square, because it was those were all 126 prints. Very rare when they were 35.
I had both of those. When I started, it was with the 126, and then as that kind of got phased out, it's like we had 110. The 110 was such a small piece of film.
Oh yeah,
the pictures were sort of terrible because you're really trying to squeeze this all in a very tiny.
Yeah, it was similar to the size as a 16 millimeter film. It was actually a little bigger, but so grainy, the quality just wasn't there.
But 110 really did become my photography teacher in ninth grade used to call them PhD cameras. Push here, dummy.
Right.
I mean, the simple point and shoot, point and click, they used to call them point and shoot.
It was like take anywhere. It was small.
Yeah.
It was thin.
All of those use 110 film.
And being cartridges, it was really
didn't you
easy.
Just drop that in there, and it just
you dropped it in, and when it was at the end,
have to string it or anything.
And the film moved from one side of the canister to the other. So when you were done, everything was protected.
Yeah.
35 millimeter, which is much bigger and much more high fidelity. I forget, that came out much earlier, but that you had to physically rewind the film after you were done. And if you forgot and you popped it open, you just destroyed all your film. So there was a safety aspect to 110 and 126.
Until they started making simple 35 millimeter cameras, the point and shoot ones that had auto rewind. So you would take the last picture, and all of a sudden your camera would go as it rewound the film back in, and then you could pop it out.
So those probably didn't become really big until the 90s, maybe.
Yeah, late 80s. Late 80s, I remember. Like Vivitar was a big company that had them, Kodak. Right. And prior to that, what people don't understand with the 126 and the 110s is that when you pushed it, there was no battery involved. It was actually a mechanical switch that was flipping up the shutter, closing the shutter, and then to advance, you had to do this funky lever or a slide, and you would have to do it until the machine stopped. You couldn't go anymore, and then you were set up for the next shot.
Right.
Later on, 126 cameras, I remember I had one that did have a battery in it, and I think it advanced it automatically. But that was interesting.
Now, from a quality standpoint, these were very, very small lenses, usually probably glass still at that point, but probably by the time you got into the 110s, maybe plastic.
On the cheaper ones.
They were fixed focus. You had no depth of field. You had no control. And also there was no exposure control. It was literally the shutter was the shutter.
Yep.
So all of these tips about the positioning against the sun and all of that is basically trying to get you a decent picture. You will find lots of photographs of Walt Disney World outside of decent quality. If you tried to take a picture inside without a flash of Small World or the Country Bear Jamboree, you often got, black or very underexposed photos because it was a quick shutter and there just wasn't enough light. So you'll see a lot of terrible photos of the insides of attractions during that time because that was all that you could do.
And the shutter stayed open longer. You got a blur. And then you start to expose the grain. And here's the other interesting thing today. Everybody selects a night shot. And don't forget, one of the things we really didn't mention, film came in different speeds. And speed was an indication of how quick the film reacted to the light. A lower number meant it was a faster film, and a higher number meant it was a slower film. So if you were filming during just beautiful daylight, sunny day, you wanted a 200 film. But if all of a sudden a thunderstorm came up and it's cloudy, that 200 film isn't going to work very well. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, where did it go to? How 1600? I think was the highest.
Yeah, I mean 400 was
400 was the sweet spot.
Was this pretty common? You
Yeah.
could get 800 in some places.
Yeah, I mean professionals went to like 1800 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But
But
most people,
that was consumer 400 was kind of the standard.
Yeah.
Because again, as you approach the higher speeds, the 800s, the 1600s, film grain usually got worse.
Worse and
you
worse.
Had that trade. You had that trade off.
Let me drag Eastman and Kodak here out of the lab so we
Okay.
can get back.
Well, we got a couple more things though. Okay,
but then Polaroid,
Polaroid
That's
and disc.
what I was going to.
Yeah, let's go to Polaroid and disc.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Hal. Because we discovered this together tonight. So
yeah. So as there was this transition away from GAF, Polaroid took over, and you can still get Polaroid cameras today. This was the instant camera. So the idea was that the chemical pack for developing the film, you didn't have to send this out for development like you did with these other films. And this is the part that is freaky. All of this film stuff we're talking about, you took the picture, it went into your camera, and then you had to take it back with you, and you would mail it away, or take it to your local photomat,
or grocery store, or anywhere,
And depending on where you took it, you might wait a week or two, or as later on, it's like they would do same day, and then eventually, as you got into 35 and Eckerd's or somebody could do it within a couple of 1 hours. So the famous 1 hour photo was because you could drop something off an hour later, you get back, but you didn't know what you're shooting. You were shooting blind this entire time. So there was no instant feedback of being able to look at your picture and go, oh, that was a good one. Let me take another one. You took a picture, you crossed your fingers, and you hoped that it came out on the other side. With the instant photo, the Polaroid, you could take a picture, and the chemical pack to develop it was actually sandwiched in the film itself. So it would scoot out of the front of the camera, and then you could shake it like a Polaroid picture, as Outcast said, which allegedly you're not actually supposed to shake it. So you wait, and then over a period of time, the image would sort of magically fade up, the opposite of Marty McFly in Back to the Future, and you would get the picture for you to look at and go like, oh, that was a good one, or that was a bad one.
Because it was a couple minutes, and you'd kind of sit there and start to see the image start to kind of fade in. And you're like, oh, look at that. But those early Polaroids, because Polaroid's out in the early 60s, right?
Those cameras go back to the 20s,
okay.
Actually. Yeah.
So Edwin Land and the Polaroid Land Corporation, they bring those out. And those early Polaroids, and the Polaroids really up through the early 70s, had like plates almost, like that you pulled it out and then you had to peel the developing layer off the top. And
right. For professional camera people, even in the 90s, before everything went digital, if you were shooting 3/4 inch film or 5 or whatever, because of this whole thing that we're talking about, you couldn't see what you were shooting. You would actually put a black and white Polaroid on the back of your camera and shoot that first, and the photographer would pull that off to make sure that everything was looking good. And then once you were happy with the way that the black and white Polaroid looked, because it was cheap, then you would put your expensive color film on it and then actually do your photo shoot with models or whatever, houses, whatever. But you would always use the Polaroid as the test to make sure that your exposure was looking good.
So the Polaroids that I remember, excuse me, from my childhood and growing up, were the kind that, the camera sat upright and they would take the photo and then it would shoot out the front, and it had this white border and there was nothing to peel off or anything. You just held it in your hand. You were careful not to touch the photo area until it dried.
Right.
But you would just sit there and, as Hal said, you would kind of wave it to kind of speed the process. And I don't know if you were supposed to do that or not. But that actual model of film from Polaroid Just kind of researching earlier today, we discovered the SX70 camera. This was 1979 when they were the sponsor. They called it Time Zero film. So, those would come out. They would spit out the front. You didn't have to peel anything off. It was already in its nice little case, and there was a place for you to hold it. And it would develop faster than anywhere else and any of their prior products. The cool thing about this was that it debuted at Walt Disney World.
Wow.
So we found this article from the Orlando Sentinel, December 5th, 1979. And it said within a few days, Polaroid will begin selling Central Floridians a new color film for the SX70 instant camera, although the product won't be available nationally until sometime next year. Wow. Time Zero film, which Polaroid claims is faster and has deeper color than its regular film, will be available at Walt Disney World where Polaroid operates a camera center on Main Street, and also at regular retail stores in the Orlando, Daytona Beach region. Disney World is one of our biggest customers, and they also provide the cross-section of people we can interview and then make changes if necessary in our marketing research, said Henry Horenstein at Polaroid's headquarters in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
It's interesting the aspect of, you see people carrying things around at Disney World, and I just imagine carrying around, how many shots were in a case of Polaroid film typically? Like 12?
10.
Yeah, it was the shortest one of all of them.
And they were $1 a pop. That would be $10 to buy one of those.
But you didn't have the processing fee that you had on your,
because you got to haul around 10 photos with you all day, and then you shoot another 20. I mean,
you got a stack of them. You got to bring a box with you.
Yeah, was there like a little box? And then too, I'm imagining
that's why moms carried giant purses.
Was there random Polaroids just laying on the ground because people dropped them different places? And
well,
this one
if you got a blurry one, you could just throw it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You take another one immediately, Now, what that was 10. What's interesting is that Kodak, the 110, the 126, and 35 millimeter, they were all multiples of 12. You had a 12, a 24, or a 36 exposure. And I think actually 110 and 126 didn't even have a 36. I mean, the 36 exposure. As far as I know,
I don't think so.
It was 24, 12 or 24.
And then they got to the 36 with the 35 millimeter film.
Right.
Would get the 36. Yeah. Those were the ones my mom used at Christmas.
Now, if you were really cagey, you could not advance your film as far as they recommended you to, and you might be able to squeeze out an extra picture or two.
Right.
Like either at the beginning or at the end if you're like wanted to get a little bit more out of your...
Or the last one was like a half a photo, though. So it's like a half a photo.
Always an angle.
Brian, why don't you hit on the Kodak disc real quick, and then we'll touch base on some flash techniques here that we want to talk about.
Good God. So that's something else you could buy at the camera center.
Yeah, we're going to talk
flash
about
cubes.
Don't spoil my.
So anyway,
so with a feather.
There was there was an attempt by Kodak in the 1980s to roll out the Kodak disc camera. It was my first camera, and I got to tell you, like Christmas every year, somebody got a camera. Like if you were there, like that was a big gift in the up and through the 90s. Like somebody got a camera at Christmas time. Kids, adults, it was always a big deal to get a nice camera or a new camera. So Kodak comes out with the Kodak disc, and this is supposed to be the simplest thing. It's a very thin camera, could fit in your back pocket. The film was literally on a disc. It was on a spinny disc, on a round disc. That just popped right into the back of the camera, and you pointed and clicked, and it did everything automatically. It focused automatically. It did light meters automatically. It did everything automatically. It also automatically took terrible pictures. And if you like me owned one, the dark scenes were grainy and difficult to make out. The scenes outside, the prints were small because the actual exposed film was the picture was so tiny.
I don't know if it was much bigger than what 110 was. I mean, they were really small.
They were really small.
Yeah, they might have even been smaller.
Yeah, and I still have a couple of my negative wheels here. I mean, I have all the photos.
Right.
I've scanned them and shared them before, but I got that camera the same year that they gave us the trip to Disney World for Christmas. So I opened the camera. I think on Christmas morning we had opened the trip the night before that we were going 6 weeks later at the end of January. And the purpose of the camera was so that I could have pictures on my trip. And Brian got his first camera. I was 13 years old. The funny thing is thinking about it, I think by counting it, I took either 5 or 6 rolls, discs worth of film before I never took any other pictures with the thing. I can't explain it other than that. I know I took it to school once because I have pictures of me in middle school in 8th grade, like inside the building, and some of the teachers and kids on the bus. I think I took 2 rolls in Walt Disney World. And 1 or 2 others, like of just random things, as we were either traveling or took it to the shore. And, but that was it. Like I did, and then the camera went, sat by the wayside, and we started taking them on better camera equipment. Yep. I don't know if I got another camera or what it was.
So I got the size here. Get this. It was only 10 millimeters by 8 millimeters it's about half the size of 110 and about an eighth of the size of 135. 135 was another film format that we're not going to talk about. But
so to me, with that disc system coming out in 1982,
yes,
and Epcot opening in 1982, to me those two things are indelibly linked together.
Mm-hmm.
And every Kodak advertisement associated with their sponsorship in Epcot, and also throughout the entire property, like always showed the disc camera. I can't separate Epcot and the disc camera.
Not
to
at
me,
all.
those two things go together.
In fact, if you, we have some in the archive, and the map that they gave out was modeled and advertised the Kodak disc, and it had the spinny wheels on the 2 sides where you could put the land that you were in, and all of a sudden all the information underneath it would change. To show you the stuff that's in the land pavilion, and then you would turn the wheel over to the imagination pavilion, and all of a sudden all the information underneath you was the imagination pavilion, with a little exposed cutout.
So a couple more things here on film size. I know I get very geeky and very excited about this. One last one. Do you guys remember APS? Kodak Advantix came out, and that was smaller than 35 millimeter or 135, and it had a slightly different aspect ratio, and it was all in one cartridge where you didn't need to rewind it. And the cool thing was you didn't get negatives back. You got your cartridge back that was still filled with the negatives, which was crazy.
I had one of those cameras, and I remember one of the other benefits of that, allegedly as a benefit, is like you could choose the size of the print you wanted, so you could switch between panoramic. And I think it had 3 sizes: panoramic, a slightly larger, and then like a 4:6 aspect ratio.
Oh, cool!
So you could pick the aspect ratio of the photo you wanted to take.
You wanted to do. That's actually pretty cool. Yeah, that's right. I forgot I had the panoramic mode. So another really quick thing, and then we're getting flashes too. Do you gentlemen remember in the back of magazines there was always or even in your Sunday Parade magazine there was this advertisement for cheap 35 millimeter film, and it would be like half the price. You're like, oh my God, they'll send you 10 rolls. And what was interesting about it is there was a small little thing in there. It required a special processing. Normal processing is you take photos and you get what we commonly refer to as the negative, because it's the negative print. And then you make a positive, which is the print that you actually physically hold. These were positives. You wouldn't get negatives back. You would get positives. So you had to have you had to have a different chemical bath. And then on top of it, you also had to have a way to take the positive to make it. So it was essentially movie film, that 35 millimeter movie film that they had repurposed. It wasn't good quality, but they would sell it to you. And the thing is, where they made their money was the developing, because you had to go to them or some other place that could do the opposite process. Do you remember that, Hal? You're shaking your head.
Yeah, I do remember that. Absolutely.
Yeah, really interesting. So
yeah, what a brilliant. It's
a brilliant marketing. Yeah.
As we have delved into, all these different formats, it's always interesting to see, like, the first 8mm film was literally slicing 16mm film in half.
Exactly.
And there are so many of these formats that are derived from other formats where they're like, oh, if we do this, if we take this and we go sideways, it's like, then we can get this other format out of this. And yeah, it's really that whole business of physical media is really, really fascinating. And we haven't even talked about movie film.
No,
Yeah,
we're gonna get there. All right, one more thing on cameras, and that's the flash bulbs and flashes. So before you got to your LED flash or your 35mm battery operated flash, so we keep rewinding back. Most cameras, as I mentioned earlier, were not even powered by batteries. They were all mechanical, advancing the film, and they had this thing called a flash bulb, which was brilliant. And we all remember the old-timey photos, right? The guy standing up holding the
anybody
thing.
who's seen The American Adventure.
Yeah, they've seen the old-timey photo, right?
So that was with like
sodium, I believe, right?
Physical, like chemicals, right? That you would set on fire and then...
And the flash bulb was pretty much that. It was a compact mini explosion of light, so to speak, within this cube. And you had 4 flashes, and you'd snap the bulb on top of your camera. It fit into this little receptacle. And when you press the button on your camera, this metal arm would actually go up through the body of the camera into a hole in the flash bulb that would trigger the chemical reaction and the explosion to give you that burst of light. And that was timed at the right time. And then when you advance the film, being a cube, the flash bulb would rotate so that you had another flash ready to go until you used all 4 sides. The flash Deca cube never made it into existence. But that was another expensive commodity that you had to purchase if you want to take those flash photos. So, there's a note in here, an important word about flash bulbs. They're prohibited most indoor attractions. Dimly lit shows are virtually impossible to shoot with flash equipment. Don't try to illuminate large. And it says a flash picture of the Cinderella castle will require more than 100,000 flash bulbs. So, which I think is hilarious.
Well, the good news is at the end of the night, that actually can happen during the fireworks, right?
If you got everybody timed 100,000 and got a time.
And actually, that is one of the funny things is you would see people taking pictures of fireworks with flash.
Yes.
Which then sort of defeats the purpose because then the camera's trying to close the shutter faster.
Exactly, because it thinks there's a flash, and my dad would always go like, oh, those pictures are not coming out. Turn your flash off. Turn your flash off. So. All right, Brian, I'm going to hand it back to you because I'm going to get into film and movie film in a little bit and talk about our new machine.
We'll talk a couple of things here. Okay. Let's jump back to Polaroid because Polaroid's instant photos, that gimmick was big for them because it drove film sales. That's where they made their money. Not that Kodak and the others didn't. I mean, they made cameras and they developed, but Polaroid had a program where you could give them a coupon when you walked into the Magic Kingdom, walk into the camera center, and they would give you a camera for the day that you could use while you were in the park. Free camera rental. All you had to do was buy the film to put in the camera, and they would let you use it all day long as much as you want. Just turn it in at the end of the day. I don't know if you had to leave a deposit for it or not. I presume that you may have. They also set up photo ops. And so there is one that we had years back. We asked people to send us their photos if they ever made use of these photo ops. This one on Main Street, USA, there was like the old timey photos that they would have where you would dress up in period dress and I'm Billy the Kid, here in a saloon. What they did was it made it look like you were on the caboose, standing on the back of the caboose of the Walt Disney World Railroad. And they would give you period costumes to dress up in to look like you were an Old West family of means traveling on the Walt Disney World Railroad. I did paste one of those pictures in the chat.
Oh my God, we did it. It was
up.
So humiliating to stand there.
But the interesting thing about these was these Polaroid instants were 8x10s.
Wow.
So while they didn't sell instant 8x10 film for this particular photo op, they did that. I don't know how long they operated using kind of an instant thing, because by the back half of the 80s, early 90s, they had those machines that could print a photo fairly quickly. Like if there was a photo taken at a photo shoot, you could get your souvenir photo, and we'll get into the digital stuff and on ride photos. But I know Yvonne has shared with us, there's a Christmas photo that she said they took in Lake Buena Vista Shopping Village. There was another place where you could go and kind of take a family photo with a holiday backdrop, and I kept looking for it. I know I have copies of it, but I think there's characters in it or something like that. So again, we'll put the call out. If you have one of these photos standing on the back of the the caboose and you haven't sent it to us, by all means, please do, so we can add it to our gallery, because we do have a gallery of those on our website. So you said you did that one, Todd. I think your photo's on the site, right?
We did. We actually did two of them. One was, our photo is on the site. One, we did the back of the train, and then we also did the old timey one in. We were just standing in Victorian garb. That they had one over at Lake Buena Vista. By that time, it was actually some sort of quick processing print film. Yeah. You came back an hour later or something like that. It wasn't the Polaroid one. Well, but now you got these photo booths, these printers spit out. I was in the duty-free shop in Zurich, right?
Yeah.
They said, if take your picture with this thing and bring it to the cashier, you get 20% off. So I stood there, and then boop, 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 out comes this picture of me standing next to this sign, and I got 20% off.
Now the government over there has a picture of you, so if you're happy with yourself.
I'm completely fine. I got 20% off the alcohol.
So and I'm assuming like the technology would have been similar to those the photo booths in arcades and stuff, where you would get your little strip and take your 3 or 4 pictures, and it would develop in 3 or 4 minutes.
Right.
And they'd spit them out. It's worth noting that the other sponsors, Kodak, came out with Codavision was their movie film. And I think it was a Kodak, maybe not Instamatic, or maybe it was Instamatic, but they came out with a competitor to Polaroid where they had their own. You're shaking your head. Yes. Do you remember the name? How
they did? We owned one, so I'm trying to remember what it is now.
And the Instavision or something like that, and Fuji did too. Like there were competitors that tried to also enter the market on instantly developing products, and nobody really ever overtook Polaroid. And we did say you can still buy Polaroid. You couldn't for a while. I want to say 2011 or so, they closed it down. And then like 5 or 6 years later, some guys in Europe decided we need to bring it back. And no one had the formula. Like it just didn't exist anywhere. So they had to go and like clean room engineer it to try to recreate the process, which they succeeded at. And now they are the ones who sell film for your old new Polaroid cameras. So they are out there. And then they came out. I know JT, you mentioned a few years back, Lily got an Instax, I think, camera, and there's some digital variants of it now where it just instantly prints a digital print, and they were hot for a while in the 2010s.
All right. So Brian, amazingly, the Kodak instant print film was called Kodak Instant Print Film. They did not brand it in any way. Now, they did come up with fun names for the cameras. Like the camera that we had was called The Handle. And it was literally because it had this giant handle on it underneath the flash. And there was another one which remarkably looked like The Handle, but it was called like the Pleasure Maker or something.
Okay. Yeah, I remember seeing that. Yes.
So, these cameras were absolutely gigantic. I mean, it was probably about a foot across. They were not convenient to carry at all. Hard plastic, heavy, and the way that the lens was configured, they weren't compact like the Polaroids were and folded up. They were just these sort of behemoths. We can put a picture of one of them in the.
They were very unwieldy.
It's ridiculous. I mean, it's just crazy. Go ahead.
I was just going to note for people in the Polaroid market today, a pack of 8 sheets, which is 8 pictures, is $20 these days.
Wow.
So if you were to go into the market today and you want to buy some film for your Polaroid One Step and think it would be fun to take it around the parks, because they did make a Mickey Mouse branded Polaroid camera in addition to a Mickey Mouse Kodak camera that put Mickey in the picture with you.
Wow.
Nice.
Is this
it was called the Pleaser was the other model.
Yeah, I just found the Pleaser 2 Kodamatic.
They made it better.
It's just amazing to me, though. You know, we talk about these cameras, the sizes, what was that, the 110?
110, 126.
My brain goes back to, like, seeing one of these in somebody's hand at some point.
Yeah.
You know, and as a kid, I didn't know one from another, like, oh, that's a camera. Or you'd see it, you know, don't touch that.
Well,
that's expensive. You're not
next
allowed
retro magic, everybody's getting at 126, or let's just get a bunch of disposable. Was there ever a disposable 110?
I just feel like I've seen the Pleaser 2 somewhere in somebody's, you know, curio cabinet or something.
I do want to kind of try to keep us focused on Walt Disney World here.
Sorry.
The only thing I will say to close off the Kodak instrument, they actually got sued by Polaroid. It took 10 years for it to go through court, and Polaroid actually recovered almost $1 billion in damages from that because they said that Kodak stole their technology.
I think they hired guys from Kodak or from Polaroid that knew the process, and there's here, we'll design the camera for you. One of the things that you could rent for free at the Camera Center when Polaroid was there, Polaroid said, you know what, hey, these instant photos are so popular now, let's do the same thing with 8mm movies. And so they invented a product called Polavision, where you could spend a lot of money to buy their camera and then spend even more money to buy their instantly developing as you shoot it movie film, where you would shoot the like, you know, in the park that day, and then you could watch it on your Polavision viewer projector that night. It took the absolute worst films you can possibly imagine, and if you search on YouTube for Polavision, you will find people who have converted a handful of them and posted them on YouTube. And I mean, it looks like something you found in the bottom of a trash can, and like you couldn't quite get all the grime and gunk off of it, even with Todd's squirt bottle. You couldn't.
It's not going to do anything.
They took terrible movie. The product did not last long, but that was. It is funny to see those, like, you'll find Disney World guides, you know, the maps and stuff that they handed out that will advertise. Stop by the Camera Center today, rent, well, you know, get your free movie camera.
That's insane.
That's
crazy.
crazy.
And if you read about the process, how it worked, it's crazy. Believe it or not, Andy Warhol shot a bunch of stuff with one of those.
Andy Warhol loved Polaroid.
It fits the bill.
Polavision. They converted all in Pittsburgh and the whole thing. So.
Yep. So, and just this as a side note, as the technology advanced in these camera shops, as you moved into VHS tapes, Betamax tapes, people bringing their video cameras, they sold all of those supplies there too. I can't quite say they sold battery packs for your video cameras because each one took a different battery pack. But there may have been a couple for sale in there that were more standard as the 80s went on.
Yeah, I'll tell you the one thing they did let you do, if you brought in your charger, they would actually hold the charger there, and you could recharge you could leave your battery there, and they would recharge it for you.
Look at that!
While you went out into the park and shot.
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty amazing as they moved on, and then they got into like video camera rental. As soon as movie cameras kind of started to fade, they began Kodak They had a concession where they would rent you a video camera for the day, and you can, go there and shoot. Kodak
and I
did
can
make
tell you,
videotapes.
it was the same deal where they didn't charge you for that. I remember I left a credit card deposit in case I didn't come back with the video camera at the end of the night.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as I bought the videotape from them there in the store, I was able to use the video camera for the day for free.
Yeah. So imagine all of that happening at the time. A couple more things that, we touched on this earlier in just general photography terms, but film developing, which in the day you were on property, you were on your Florida vacation, you took your pictures, and unless you went to, you were staying in New Smyrna Beach for a couple of days and went to the photo mat and they were going to have your pictures back in a day or two. Because 1 hour photo really was I don't want to say it was an 80s thing, like that it started to come into its own, but I don't really think it was particularly big before that, and it was very expensive. Most people waited till they got home, but Walt Disney World by the 1980s was offering film developing on property. They had one place. No, I don't know where it was located, but somebody listening, Mike Bounds or somebody's going to listen and tell us, oh, hey, that was in the such and such building that they had the film developed there. But you could drop it off in your hotel. You could drop it in the parks. There were, we have a couple of the envelopes on our site. But you would fill out your information, you'd drop your rolls of film in there, and you would get your pictures the next day. They had one developing machine somewhere on property.
1986, we have exposed film can be left for processing at Mickey's Film Express at the Camera Center in the Magic Kingdom, or at Fort Wilderness, or at the hotels. I assume they took it somewhere. They didn't develop it at Fort Wilderness. At Epcot Center, drop off film at the Camera Center near Spaceship Earth. If you leave film before 10 a.m., you can pick it up after 5 p.m. on the same day.
Wow.
Film dropped off after 10 a.m. will be ready by 10 a.m. the following day. Now, 95, we have a little different story here. 2-hour processing is available at the Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and the studios, at the resorts, and the Disney Village Marketplace, wherever there is a Photo Express sign. Film is processed right on the premises.
Which would make sense because by then they were making the types of machines they would have in drugstores and places where they could just develop it right on site.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from people who use the service. Anybody out there that used it. But yeah, you started to see much faster turnaround times, and even grocery stores and everything. It was usually next day or 2 day. By that point, nobody was waiting a week to get their pictures anymore.
Now, I want to ask How a question because he was the big Disney guy in the 90s, Pleasure Island, the whole thing. How, let's say you're enjoying a night at Pleasure Island, that film just hits zero. Where do you buy more film at Pleasure Island? There's only one spot.
Oh, really?
That's it.
Huh.
And the lady doesn't walk around with them on the test tube shot.
No, she doesn't, does she?
That would have been something, huh?
That's a really good question.
Pleasure Island to buy film. Any guesses, Todd, Brian?
Not the Hot Diggity Dog stand.
No.
I mean,
mannequins. I don't know.
They say in 1995, Music Legends. I assume that was a gift shop.
Wow.
Okay.
Music Legends was a location where you could go and record yourself over a pre-recorded song.
Okay.
And then take home a burnt CD.
That makes sense because they would have been stocking, blank cassette tapes there.
Yeah.
And
there was a similar shop there when it opened where you could be in a video. So they had a green screen and you would lip sync along with the song and you take on the video.
That was on. I recorded a song on the Ocean City Boardwalk at Studio One, which was another one of those sound recording booths where you could pick from. It was karaoke basically, but you could pick from any song that was on the list. I did want to mention, and I meant to mention it earlier. the camera shop wasn't the only place you could buy film.
No,
All over the park, in various gift shops, there was both the supply of film and batteries, because those cameras all worked on batteries. And then don't miss out on, because I don't think there's any left in the Magic Kingdom now, but there were kiosks, those little where they would sell that they converted after 1981 when they stopped with the ticket books. They converted some of those ticket book stands, the little kiosks, ticket book booths, to sell film and camera equipment and souvenir guides and things like that.
You're absolutely right. It became a film and information booth.
Yep.
Actually, the fascinating thing about the film everywhere, it was like buying a pack of cigarettes. The film wasn't just out where you could grab a pack. It was always behind the counter, and you always had to ask for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the person working the register would turn around and pull it down for you. I mean, that's how expensive of a commodity
Yeah.
it was at that time, because it was so small. They probably figured people would just pickpocket it and take off. So
I believe the
you had to
batteries
ask for film.
The batteries were behind too, I think some of them were really weird. Like we're not talking double A's here and triple A's. I mean, some of the cheaper cameras worked on, but there were these strange sized button cells that the metering would on old time, 35 millimeters.
The light meters and stuff.
Yeah, the light meters would run on this tiny little battery, and if you didn't have the right one, and later on too, I think they got into some camcorder type batteries and things like that as well. A common VHS tapes, VHS-C, all your video in high 8. So they milked it for as long as they could have until cameras started to go down. So
now 1986, they say they'll repair your camera.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Those of a minor nature can be handled by the Kodak Camera Center in the Magic Kingdom or the Camera Center near Spaceship Earth and Journey into Imagination at Epcot Center. So if you have a minor fix, they'll take a look at it.
Well, your strap's broken. That's about all we can handle.
That should segue us into talking a bit about the fact that, yes, Kodak sponsored Journey into Imagination, so they did have a little camera film supply shop in the pavilion. And we were asked the other day by Futureport, hey, does anybody have pictures inside of it? When you only had 24 or 36 pictures, your normal, other than taking a picture of the Figment figure that was in there, because they had a Figment figure on top of one of the display cases, you tended not to take pictures in gift shops. Like, that wasn't even though the Epcot gift shops are gorgeous, especially back then, like, people just didn't take a lot of photos inside of them. They were taking them of, oh, look, there's a friendship going across World Showcase Lagoon. Let me take one of a billion pictures of that today.
That's why when we get it, we are just, whoa.
We get excited when there's a shot inside of the cup and saucer.
Right.
And
or, hey, when we get the latest film we got has a shot, up in the Contemporary in the restaurant. I mean, film.
What was the one we got that time? We found it was from like somebody doing a recon mission. It was like the menu board, cash registers.
My 1975 food service slide set. That's all in the. It's on the site. It's one of the ones we've never resold. I just won't part with it. No one else is allowed to have it.
It's just crazy, some of those. Yeah, you see it and you're like, wait a second.
Yeah, this guy was there taking pictures of restaurant services and menu boards, and clearly he was there doing research for Paramount or some other competitor. So we're talking about this progression now to videotapes, and that lends to, okay, so what has happened to all this? Because the camera shop in the Magic Kingdom is now the candy store. The camera center in Epcot is still the camera center, but it's all phone cases and PhotoPass services.
Now, can you buy film there?
The last time I looked, you could buy a disposable film camera. You could not buy film anymore.
I researched this like last time I was there.
Did you?
I was looking, I go, is there any film, any form of camera, anything? And yes, there's like a waterproof disposable that was like $29 or something, just a...
The Disney MGM Studios, how asked the question earlier, what has become of the darkroom? The darkroom, same deal. They use it for photo pass, trying to sell you packages and souvenir photos, and if you want to print an on-ride photo or a photo that you took on Hollywood Boulevard or Sunset with a photo pass photographer, and phone cases. And there's little straps and waterproof cases for your phone, like things like that, but there is no like absolutely there's photo albums there is no actual film or camera supplies there.
Yeah.
And the shop at Animal Kingdom was never exclusively a photo shop. It just had a section that was photos. So naturally now that's become phone cases and the same kind of stuff. So that's the legacy of those photos. But it does segue into the next big thing, which became digital photography and the on-ride photo, which kind of ushered that era in. And
so, gentlemen, I also wanted to talk about movie film. We talked ad nauseum about 35 millimeter, 126, and all this.
You're
stuff.
kind of our movie film guy,
I
aren't you?
try to be. I'm kind of. It's my thing. I was born and raised with it. Exactly. I got Film Guard right here, and gentlemen, I'll show you the new setup because it's really cool. So we talked about the souvenir films earlier. A lot of times, people who went to Walt Disney World just bought still cameras, but some people, as you know, we've done a lot of these. We have hundreds and hundreds of home movie films now where they would bring a physical camera. As Hal pointed out earlier, the early ones were an 8 millimeter that was actually a 16 millimeter cartridge. You'd put it in, you'd flip it around, and then when you send it off for processing, they'd split it down the middle and send you back 50 feet of 8 millimeter film. Later on came Super 8, and then Super 8 with sound, and the cameras themselves changed. Some of them were originally winding, some of them worked on batteries. And really, when you guys think about it, these are mechanical marvels, what people were carrying around for the time. I mean, really, it was a miniature movie studio in your hand, and we laugh at the size of them, but you realize that that's all metal, screws, gears, timing wheels, cogs. It's amazing what they produced 50, 60 years ago before the advent of any type of video camera, which we can talk about in a minute.
And I will say, still looks so good today.
Exactly.
If you used a quality
film
and a quality camera.
Right. We get film that we get GAF, we get Fuji. There's a lot of no-name brands out there, and the Kodak Kodachrome film is the king of all films. To this day, any film that we get, and I see that Kodachrome on there, I'm like, yes, that color is going to be great. Brian, you talked about vinegar, degradation of film when they're not stored properly. Many years of warping can give a vinegar smell to it. And you mentioned the restoration.
It's the chemical breakdown.
Yeah, it's a chemical breakdown. Now, it's funny. I was with as Brian pointed out, I was with my dad last weekend, and we got into talking about films as we always do. And knowing that it was coming up, he went to school for cinematography. I lived around these things, as I mentioned before, these cameras. I grew up behind the camera, in front of the camera. Not acting, by the way, just reacting to what Santa left for us most years. Just daily, just big, celebratory events in our lives.
So in a sense, Todd, I feel like I grew up in front of the camera too. Look at that. I never would have thought of that.
But I asked my dad, I'm like, okay, what is it with why was Kodak Kodachrome so good? And he's like, it wasn't just the film. And he said there was actually the dyes. It was actually, believe it or not, it was the processing. Because what Kodak did is they had very, very strict and regimented rules around when the developer, the fixer, the washing water, and all that stuff had to be replaced or cleaned or replenished. And as a result, what happened is that the cheaper developers would try to stretch as much as they could out of those different chemicals. The film may have been great quality. You could have sent them Kodachrome film, but it was the processing that really looked good when you got it, and started to very quickly degrade over time, and the dyes faded because of the chemicals on it. So that was really interesting. I always thought it was the film, but he said it's more due to the processing. So not only do you see Kodak film, but if you ever go out there and you look at 8mm film, you're excited when you see the red leader that says processed by Kodak. That's the stamp of quality on an 8mm film. So, a couple things to talk about. People carry them around. They were heavy. Brian made a great point many episodes back, and to the point he just made about not carrying your cameras all over the place. You really didn't there were less places you brought your movie camera for the same purposes. Movie cameras are really just taking a series of still photos. But the great thing about those is that as they got more advanced, you were able to adjust the aperture and the timing and zoom and all that. And just as we talked about, there were different speeds of film. There was film that you could go inside. I think we had one guy, he used the right speed of film. Remember, he went out and filmed the electrical water pageant, and it looked wonderful because they used the right one. But to Brian's point earlier is that when you get a film up in the contemporary, or somebody that decided to drag their expensive movie camera into river country with the threat of dropping in the water and getting sand all over it, you're just amazed, because most people just wouldn't do that. So 2 points here. As many of you know, we restore films, and then what I have here is probably better suited for a movie night, but I'm just gonna not everybody attends our movie night, so I gotta mention it here. Kodak would send sometimes, depending on your processing, they would send things back in different ways. And so normally you would get back this little yellow box with your film in it, and it was fantastic. Like that, when that came in the mail, you knew that my dad had processed something just absolutely fabulous. There was this big, I think it held like 12 different reels in it, this bifold book, if you will, and you could put 6 different 50-foot reels in there, and it gives you these tips on what makes a good movie. And very similar to what we talked about before, tell a story with your photo, shoot from different viewpoints, view the scene length, how long should a scene be? Now, gentlemen, we've watched a lot of films over the years. We get some of them that were like every 3 seconds it's changing, right? So
stretching
exactly,
that film.
and they're really trying to push this. It talks about exposure, how it's automatic, and sharpness and focus and all that. But what I love best, and this is really good for a movie night, is that they have hints on good showmanship. So, gentlemen, I just want you to remember this the next time that we do a movie night. This is hot projector tips, really. Use a good movie screen. Set up, thread, and focus your projector before your audience comes into the room.
Sure.
Have a spare projector lamp handy. I love this one. Don't let the screen go white. Turn off the projector lamp as soon as the movie is over.
Yeah, you got
right. You want showmanship.
And this is
professional.
This is like showing a YouTube video and not having it queued up. Hold on, let me
search for it.
Right,
Right,
come on.
Taped or recorded background music adds a pleasant touch. So,
and if you narrate something like "Home of the Big Silver Ball,"
exactly.
I was just thinking about
talks about
Harold,
taking
right?
all your 50-footers and putting them together. Now, Brian, get the pen out, or actually, JT, you get the pen out for this. For information on home movie making showmanship, see your Kodak dealer for a copy of How to Make a Good Home Movie. That's Kodak publication AW-3 and Better Movies in Color publication AD-4. So if we could find those, I'd like to read those and get some more tips on it.
Now, Birnbaum says to pick a theme like a walk down Main Street or a stroll through France.
Now, you guys have seen clips of a film that we're probably going to hold for a while because it's really, really cool. It has some really neat stuff in it. This person not only picked a theme, I swear sometimes you feel like you're watching a promotional film. This gentleman did such a good job, which is really great. But the last thing I wanted to talk about and let everybody know a little bit about the transfer process, not in detail because we have to convert these films for you to be able to see them. But gentlemen, I'm going to take the camera here. I want you to see this. I don't know. Can you see this newfangled setup? We've got a machine here. I'll have to send you guys a picture.
It's got a custom-built machine.
It is a custom-built machine that I actually have sitting also next to our main projector. I could capture Super 8 8mm in higher than high definition. It's like 2560, I think, is the lines of resolution. You don't really want to go much higher than that with 8mm. But the great thing is I got the other projector working. It's hooked up to the computer, and I can now capture the sound from them. So we can do all of our 8mm and Super 8 processing, restoration in-house. And with Film Guard, we have clean prints. So anything that JT releases, well, JT, you've got a lot of backlog, right? We've got like 90 different videos and films.
Yeah, we've got a few in there that are definitely not releasable, but yeah, since you've added, it's definitely going to be exciting.
Anything that is up, well, I don't even want to give a date, but let's say anything uploaded after January of this year will be coming from this new system. So I'm really excited about it, except for the film that I recently got, accidentally dropped it up north in my driveway and they plowed. So we will not, it's in an envelope. It's a bubble wrap. We will not see that film until the spring. I'm just hoping that it survived. I realized that.
Did you lose it in the snowbank like a monorail track?
Pretty much.
Like, did you drop it and not realize you dropped it, or did you drop it at the very moment the snowplow driver flew by?
Loading the car. We had 2 cars up there this past weekend, and I moved it from one car to the other, set it on the bumper because the car was locked, and I forgot, and I know it fell off there, and yes. Actually, there's probably footage from my security camera in the front of it falling off. I'm going to have to go get that. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So anyway, I just wanted to give a little, I always love talking about film. If any people out there want me to just do a film night, Brian won't attend, but I will attend, and I will go over this ad nauseum and talk as much as anybody wants to. So write into podcasts at retrowdw.com. If you want a geek film night, let me know. I'll do it. So
members only.
I will
only.
Absolutely attend, if only to mock you.
Yes, you can. I'm
evening.
fully accepting of my geekiness and what I like about this. So it would be.
I do your movies, 8mm movies, the standard for 40 years, so regular 8 and Super 8. I do want to say, as a coda to Todd's, talking about how heavy and bulky the movie cameras were. The last round of like Super 8s that they made, they were plastic. The cartridges were light. They were not cumbersome to carry around. But the technology advanced so fast. It's funny because if you look at the old Sears catalogs and stuff that are online, I mean, they were selling 8mm rigs and projectors into the back half of the 80s. And I don't know anybody who was using them. Yeah, so the last, it's fascinating how quickly the technology advanced, because by the late 80s, they were still selling 8mm Super 8 movie cameras, and the film was produced until, well, it's still produced now because it's used in film school. But they were
to buy it at your local drugstore.
Yeah, well, you could buy. I mean, everywhere that sold film also usually had Super 8 film at the very least. Some places carried regular 8 and Super 8. Into the 90s, it was pretty common to see it on the shelves. But it was coexisting at the same time that the video camera in Betamax, VHS, VHS-C, 8mm videotape, high 8 videotape, and probably 3 or 4 formats I'm forgetting. They were out there too, and that became the dominant thing so quickly.
Yeah.
Like in 1980 or 81, you'd expect to see film cameras, which is what we find. By 83, 84, 85, who's buying a film camera now? You're buying a video camera and doing videotapes with that, because instead of 3 or 3.5 minutes or 5 minutes on a Super 8, you can tape an hour or 2 on your video cassette, and another video cassette's only $6, and you throw it in there and you got another 2 hours.
Yeah, no developing, automatic, exposure.
Throw it in the TV at home and play it.
So, Souvenir.
Well, that was
Souvenir films became Souvenir VHS cassettes with a day at Epcot Center and a day at Disney MGM Studios, and the Magic Kingdom Souvenir, Walt Disney World, home cassette, which a lot of you had and come up all the time. I come across them all the time at flea markets. But that did lead to two things I want to talk about, which, obviously PhotoPass. I still have my first PhotoPass card, and it used to be like my pimping thing to bring it with me and like whip out this. Now they're like 15 years old. There's like this black original PhotoPass card that they gave you, and have them scan that for my pictures. Now it's all automatic with your park admission or Magic Band or whatever you're using. It's tied to your My Disney account. But unless you have to stop, if it's not, you have to stop at the camera store,
that's right,
the photo center, and get them printed out. So Disney started doing their own, putting their own photographers out there, taking pictures. You could buy a package. Annual pass holders for a long time had it included in the package. And that's why there's no camera stores anymore that sell film and things like that. But I did want to talk about, last thing I wanted to cover on this topic is on-ride photos.
Oh, yeah.
Howard, do you remember what the first attraction was that had an on-ride photo?
Oh.
So
I have an idea. I think I know what it is.
Too.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think it's Splash Mountain.
I think you are correct.
Couldn't we say that was the first one on ride that they printed because you had the on ride photo in Journey to Imagination when it took
that's
you?
true.
We'll go back and say yes, there was a video screen capture.
And didn't Tony Baxter tell us that was like they had some sort of crazy thing with Kodak to get them to do that? It was like a special camera that was used for something really bizarre that they jury rigged to do it, right?
They did it. And when was I'm trying to think, like, when did they add the Space Mountain? And
I think that was that original?
No. They didn't have the technology, I don't think, back then. I mean,
because all it was doing was sending your video to another screen.
Well, are you talking
not on ride photo? I was thinking more the post show where you went.
I'm thinking about that too, and that would have been the first time you were like,
see yourself
the first
on
time
TV.
you could see yourself on TV, like the Brady's in the Brady Bunch movie at Sears on the wall of TVs looking at themselves dancing around.
Now, we did the one, I have video of my sister and I in Mickey's Toontown where they superimposed us into Disney cartoons.
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Like it was a green screen, blue screen type thing. And
all of that, we're in that same time period of the late 80s here when Toontown opened in 87 or 88. 88.
Well, Starland, I think,
was Birthday Land first for
Birthday.
So it would have been 88. Would have been his 60th birthday, right? So, and Splash Mountain was the following year, right? 89, or was that 92?
That was like one of the first very Cedar Pointy / like money grab. Here's a picture of you on the ride. Was there any others that were like the action shot? Like Tower of Terror had it. Like it was at the top because remember you'd walk out and they had the screens there. Rock and Roller Coaster had it, but I'm trying to Big Thunder didn't. Any of the other thrill rides
by the because we're in the mid 90s. By the mid 90s they were like everywhere. It was Dinosaur and Animal Kingdom had it, and Everest, when they finally built Everest, that was so. It became all the coasters and and it was you're right. It's very Cedar Pointy. It's which I didn't mind so much when you had the PhotoPass was included, or you could buy the whole trip's pictures for less than the cost of a car payment.
I do like now though that they have to put like 50 watermarks on it because everybody for a while would walk up and take a picture of the picture with their phone.
That was a technologies colliding they weren't quite prepared for originally when suddenly everyone started walking. Like nobody cared if you were taking a picture with your BlackBerry. But once the iPhone came out and people could actually take like good photos with their phone.
They're like, wait a minute.
It was like, hey, wait a second here.
Yeah, the other thing they used to have to do was have a cast member station there with a clipboard, so in case something inappropriate
Yes.
was,
Yeah.
they would be able to hold the clipboard over the picture for the duration of its like 10 seconds or 12 seconds or whatever.
Oh, is that how they
Yeah.
dealt with it?
Yeah, that's how
Just
they
a-
do it. They would just, a person would like hold the clipboard up over the TV.
So are they using AI to detect body parts now? Is there somebody computerized pressing a button?
I can tell you when we got off, and my trip with my friends, 2003 maybe 90s. I don't remember if it was Splash Mountain or what it was, but I remember getting off, going up, standing, looking at the bank of photos, waiting for ours to come up. And the cast member looked at my group and goes, "Your picture won't be appearing here."
Whoa.
And I'm like, I'm looking at my
Ryan.
friends like, what did you do? Like, what? I don't remember who might have, somebody flipped a bird or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I was just, but I wanted to kill him, So there was a screening process at a certain point.
That's right.
I remember there was a site on the internet called Flash Mountain.
Yes.
That was all of
I
like,
remember that.
where
Oh, my
I
God.
guess a cast member would like save
The
the pictures, like
inappropriate ones.
if a girl like lifted her top while she was going down the
Or a
thing.
guy.
Yeah, or a guy. They would save that and post it on the internet.
That's crazy. I love the on-ride photo as much as I don't think I've ever bought one personally. But
Yeah, you rush out to look at them though, right? Like I always
Yeah,
go look at it.
everybody
I always
looked at
scan
it.
my
Ha, ha,
card.
ha.
You look at it, and then you're like, $30? Are you crazy? And then-
They could have sold a lot more if they didn't try to. It's almost okay. Like you can charge that much for it, and you're going to get only certain people who are going to buy it. If you drop the price down by what certain percentage, what percentage does your sales actually go up? Like with a lower price, you might actually be able to make more. And that's the thing is that people go. We're going off on a complete different tangent here, but but the price gouging in theme parks and all this. You want people to come back from an experience and say, wow, that wasn't that bad for that. Like I paid that because that was acceptable, right? Not, I didn't get that memory because it was so freaking expensive. So there's got to be a balance there.
And then all the add-ons on top of it, because you would get the 8.5 by 11, the 8 by 10 print in the cardboard, folder.
We have a hand
where
gilded
it's-
gold Frontierland
right, but then
for
you could also buy the Splash Mountain, carved, 3D dimensional frame to put it in.
That's what I was gonna
for
say,
another X amount of dollars.
And wallet size pictures.
Right, and
It's getting like,
keychains
oh my God, it's getting
and-
like school photos. JT, please
Yeah.
stop. Like, school photos are terrible, right? They charge you $29 to download the photo.
It's an archaic thing because now that we have an amazing camera in your pocket, that just changed the game for so many things. Like you said, if it was when the BlackBerry had a camera, it was funny. Let me take a picture of you, and I'm never.
Yeah, because you
get it
could
off the
barely
phone
make out that it was you.
Yeah, and I'm not going to buy 4 dongles to get this thing hooked up to my computer.
Right.
Now it's an amazing picture. It's instantly in the cloud and it's ready to go. But I mean, to the point of Splash Mountain, it was almost like a mini photo shop there at the end because you'd buy that. You could get did they sell, the little plastic funnel looking thing you'd put on the
Did you see
keychain?
Yvonne's tweet today? Or Instagram?
No.
She found a SeaWorld one that she took with her mother and her aunt when she was like 6 or 7 years old or something like that.
I
And
got
they
one
had the
downstairs. They're incredible.
Yeah, it was your.
I just wonder, did they make those at Disney for the rides?
I
or
don't.
for...
I don't think
I don't
I've
ever
never
recall
come
that,
across
yeah.
one for Disney.
I got
But you would get a souvenir
the...
photo, and it would go inside the in the little viewfinder, and you'd look through it like a spyglass, and your photo was inside of it, which is like really cool.
So
more photo souvenirs.
see, that was a positive film too. That was the type of film that would produce a positive, not a negative. Last thing you want to do is pick up those little spy glasses and see the negative, like everybody in that creepy horror green color.
Looks like your Predator versus Alien.
Yes, there we go.
You got the viewfinder on.
Now, I did want to add, I had this thrown up here, and this to me is like my era. When Kodak was the main sponsor, There, to me, at least this is my recollection and my memory of going to the parks, their guidebooks were like the guidebook. That solid color front with the photo and then the font on it, like, because that was Studios, that was Epcot. They just had a look to them, and it was like, it says, I'm looking at our site, compliments of Eastman Kodak Company, and they had a specific, like, look, whoever designed that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, just not that we could probably have a whole maps and guidebooks episode, but it is really interesting over the years watching things upsize and downsize, because the original GAF guides that they handed out were, sort of the tall, skinny brochure format.
They were like road maps.
Yeah, but very quickly that changed to more of a booklet format, and it stayed in that booklet format through the Polaroid years. And then switched, a bit again, went tall, skinny. But it's amazing the amount of detail. There's a 3-4 line descriptions of every attraction in there. And then by the 90s, the ones that you're talking about, JT, eventually those turned into fold out maps where maybe you got the attraction name and one line, and then eventually it was just the attraction name. And I used to feel like, I would take those books home at the end of a trip, and you would read them over and over again and figure out what you went on. And as you find ones on eBay, you'll see where people circled them or checked off which attractions they went on, so they know to go back and go on the other ones on the next time they went. And you got a really good idea of, what the attraction would be based on reading those books. And now it's like the guidebooks essentially became almost useless, because if you want to know where a bathroom was, that's great, but they didn't even tell you what the store names were anymore.
That's true.
At some point.
The map function became the primary thing. Part of that may have had to do with the first 10 years they existed. Most of those rides, they were trying to sell you a ticket for them.
That's true.
So there could be 4, 5, 6, 7 lines describing just how wonderful It's a Small World is if you're only willing to fork over $1.20 for a B ticket or whatever the hell it was. It's once it became one price, they just got smaller and smaller to the point that Small World's over there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, they did say, Todd, that and your color prints will be processed right here at the Walt Disney World Resort under quality standards of the Kodak Color Watch system.
Color Watch.
Color
Why
Watch.
trust your memories to anything
Absolutely.
else?
They had a stamp right on the back of the photo envelope that said, it was a little gold stamp, said Color Watch.
Color Watch, yeah.
In fact, there was a period of time where when they would run the prints, there was always a blue stamp on the back of the photos that sometimes would have a month, but most often would have that Color Watch and some kind of serial number or something on it.
Yeah. Oh, the days, gentlemen, the days.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, this is fun. I love this stuff. So.
Well, let's get into developing fluids.
Don't stop me. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, so what else do we have? Go ahead.
What killed all this, Brian? What brought about the end of? Camera phones, right? That had
and digital cameras. It started with digital cameras. It started with the very late '90s. Apple came out with the Quick Take in the earlier part of the 90s, but really by the late 90s, even companies like Kodak were making their own digital cameras that you could then plug. It would save on a card or you would plug into your computer, and that continued to develop in the 2000s. You took beautiful pictures with the digital camera.
Well, let's rewind a little bit. Let's talk about digital cameras for a second, because I'm looking at photos that my father took on high quality. I'm going to send you a picture of a cat, and this is the actual size of a cat that my father shot. Click it so that's high quality photo back then.
It depended on
right. They were small.
That's early though.
That's early
though.
Now,
when I got my Canon in 2007.
Yep.
I mean, that thing took gorgeous photos that I could never get from a film camera because I'm not a professional photographer.
Correct. Now I'll drop a photo here. This is advanced. This is just 4 years later on our honeymoon in Australia. I'm just dropping a random picture here, and look at what you got 4 years later. It was just it
I hope
leaps.
it's the same cat.
It's a dingo.
Yeah, it's an airplane. Sorry.
Oh, it's not that cat. Well, then how are we supposed to compare?
I'm sorry. I will see if I find a picture of the cat. But
no, that's all right.
I know
but that is a very cool shot of the four-engine British
BAE Aerospace 146.
Yeah,
it's a
Queen had one of those.
It was a great plane to fly on. Now, how you'd look at this and you go, oh, there's a little bit of chromatic aberration, which people are going, what is chromatic aberration? Look it up yourself.
No one's going that time.
I bet you somebody will write us on that and tell us. But
literally no one is asking that question.
I've got a really funny digital photo story for you though. When I had this boss, actually I might have some. Oh, I have some digital Disney World photos. So from 2003. I had a boss, and his early in the digital era, his parents got a digital camera, and every time they took photos, when the SD card filled up, they just go buy another one because they didn't know. You could erase them, and it was like film. So they started saving all their and marking them as vacation.
I
2001.
remember the early Sony. I'm going to kill the Mavica. I don't know how they pronounce
Mavica.
And
they used a 3.5
right.
floppy.
That saved on floppy disks.
Yeah.
I have a Mavica in my office that was from the previous administration. It saves to a mini CD-ROM.
Wow.
Whoa, really?
Like it's sitting there and it's just comical. It's that tiny, what is that, like a 4-inch disc, CDR. Then Sony came out with the memory stick.
So the
memory stick. That's
that was their own proprietary.
Yep.
Yeah, that was.
It was like the size of a pack of gum, right, or a stick of gum.
Stick of gum. Yeah, it wasn't. And the thing is that eventually, Sony, I think they actually wound up putting on some of the ones. You had memory stick, and they gave you converters, or they had SD. It was just.
That's the problem with proprietary stuff. When but again, they were all trying to shake it out, and at the same time, Kodak is still selling film cameras, and there were countless articles on the fall of Kodak and what's going to happen if they continue to lean into that. And they were trying on the digital side, but they allegedly got into the game late, and they
were doing, what they could do, Brian, was they had the they were selling printers.
They were
like
they had the whole
printers.
They had the whole easy share system where they'd sell you the camera. No, because I bought it. I mean, they'd sell you the camera. You could have them print the pictures and send them to you. You could do your own photo printer. You would just plug it in, and you didn't even need a computer, and it would print the things. Which of course they would sell the photo printer paper to you and the ink and all that. But that's what happened. All of it happened so rapidly. So as the digital cameras that replaced your film cameras got better and better, the kinds you carried around, then the cameras on phones started to get better and better. And that's really
much what killed it. I mean,
that's I mean, you reached a point in the 2010s where there was no reason for you to carry a camera with you. You had one in your pocket already that was lightweight, and you were used to carrying in your back pocket or in your front pocket or in your purse or whatever.
Yep.
And so you just took the phone out and
marry
that with places like Disney providing digital photos that you could then download right to your phone using their app and this and that. There wasn't really a need beyond the hobbyist for film anymore. But I think we all give Kodak credit for not only its omnipresence for over a century and certainly for 3 decades at Disney World. They really went down with the ship. I mean, they kept their sponsorship at the Imagination Pavilion until they declared bankruptcy. I mean, that sponsorship stayed until the bitter end. And it's not that the company's ended. It's out there. It's still producing professional motion picture equipment and some consumer products. But it's hard for people to imagine. I mean, I guess it's true of everything. We look at the pillars of American business 50, whether it's you're talking about Sears or
Kodak,
or you can probably think of
Pan Am.
You can think of a dozen of them that were just behemoths that were just everywhere, and then they're just gone.
Yeah,
Radio Shack and
I'll say for my own, how you made some really interesting comments regarding film and how things have progressed, that film looks great to this day. We always joke about VHS and video being kind of a turd you can't polish. And I'll say for my own personal thing, I've now moved on to the phone as my complete and utter solution. In fact, it was funny. I was looking in the closet tonight. I was getting out my microphone. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's my HD camcorder, that records onto an SD card. And it's, I don't know, 10 to 12 years old. Probably sell it. I got rid of my Canon digital SLR. I don't have the need to sit there and take photos and, futz around with batteries and extra SD cards and all that stuff. And recent phone upgrade I did just to get the camera so I could get rid of all that stuff, because it doesn't excite me anymore to carry all that stuff. It's a hell of a lot easier. And I'd rather preserve the old stuff, and because everything that you take now is so good. And you gentlemen, we've all talked about, right? We've reached peak phone. We're reaching a point where the eyes can't even discern any better quality. You got Samsung advertising 8K video, and there isn't even 8K TV to play it on. So I love that advertising thing.
It just means it costs $8,000.
Exactly, it costs 8 times as much. 8 times as much. So
I think the advance that we have seen with the phones isn't even so much. It's not really about the pixel depth or anything anymore, but it's about the intelligence of it to be able to figure out, how do I take a good picture? How do I set the exposure? And that is really the interesting thing. If you look back at all of the old photos that we're talking about and all of the systems, is in order to take a good photo, you really did have to have some level of knowledge of how photography worked.
Hence what these guides were trying to get you to do, right?
Exactly. If you were a good photographer, you understood exposure and aperture and all of the technical details.
But how many people read the manual? It's like an appliance or electronic. Nobody reads the manual.
Nobody does.
Once it starts working, they just kind of okay, I've gotten this far. I'm not going to read the rest.
Right. So the Instamatic cameras that did a good mechanical job at guessing were popular for a long time. I remember our family, we got our first 35 millimeter sort of pro style camera was the AE1 program from Canon, which had a light meter inside. Instead of having an external light meter is what you used to use when my dad would take home movies. He had a handheld light meter, and then you would set all the dials and things and then shoot your... And so this had a light meter inside, and that technology got a little bit better and a little bit better in 35.
And a huge difference was all those instant cameras, not the Polaroid type things, but just the PhD, push here dummy, point and shoot cameras. They stopped the scourge, Todd will tell you, of slides and films. How many things would come back out of focus?
Oh, yeah.
And those simple, you would get 36 photos back, and all 36 of them would be in focus.
Right.
They'd be a clear photo of something.
Right. Good autofocus, automatic lenses. That is another huge boon to it. So all of this technology has gotten better and better, and our phones are so smart now. They're taking 10 photos at one time and smashing them together into one really good photo with a wide dynamic range. And that's why our photos and our cameras look great, is like the camera, the phone is doing so much work to make sure that our photos look good. I look back at the 35 millimeter pictures that I took of Epcot, and half the time, if the building looks good, it's like the sky is blown out. Today, it knows, oh, that's the sky, this is the building, this is a person. I'm going to expose the sky so that it's blue, and then I'm going to automatically cut out the section with the people in the building, and I'm going to pull that out of the shadows so that it looks nice. And it's giving you not a photo of what you actually saw, but of what a photo of everyone has agreed algorithmically looks good. And it's producing, images that didn't exist.
Right, exactly.
But look good to you.
Exactly. That look good to you and satisfy your need that, oh, this is an awesome photo, and it's going to make people want want to come here or want to do this same thing, which goes full circle in that photos now are doing, and Instagram and TikTok, they're all doing the same thing that those Panaview slides and those souvenir videos was getting you to go there and getting you to try to experience the same thing that these people are experiencing, which nothing has changed in the human nature but the technology.
Right.
We
the
just
difference
use
is it's a picture of you now instead of a model.
That's true. That's
yeah.
true.
Yeah, or it's a vlogger making a video for free for Disney. I mean, it's, and I just got into on my phone. It's new. I mean, you can take a picture of whatever you want at Epcot, and if there's one person standing there and ruining your shot, you can magic erase them out of there, and it fixes it for you.
Yeah.
It's like you don't need the perfect shot. It just makes it like all that.
That's
much
how they got
easier.
rid of Bob Chapek.
They just magically
Magic erase. Yeah.
Now I'm gonna say something here that, and I know we're down all different paths, and this is I hope people at home are finding this interesting because these are things that people
They
don't.
stopped listening a long time ago.
They're with us. If you're still listening, please write into podcasts at Retro
You're either with us or
WDW
against
and
us.
just write in a time marker 2 hours 30 minutes that you made it this far. Here's the other interesting aspect of it. We are now consuming phones. We're now consuming media on most of the time very small screens. And what's interesting about that, how from media, you would get your 2x4 print, and if you blew up a 3x5 print or something to 16x20, sometimes you would lose the clarity of it, right? And we're now viewing things on high definition screens, but what you're holding in your hand is your phone or your tablet. It's such a condensed version of the photo that you took from the actual size of the photo and the pixels that you can take a crap photo really, really large and bring it down to a small size, and it will start to look better and better and better. In fact, if you ever go to it's not as apparent nowadays as TVs have gotten better, but when the HD TVs came out first, you would look at these gigantic 55, 65-inch TVs, and you look at the picture and go, yeah, okay, it's good. And then you go down to these 24-inch or these kitchen 17-inch models, whatever, and the picture looked phenomenal. You're like, why can't they do it? And that's all about bringing there's less pixels, there's less information for your eye to process, and you're actually seeing a better, clearer picture. So ironic about this is that we're taking these huge amounts of data in these photos that are only really good if you're ever going to blow it up to a 16x20 or larger, and then we view it on a postage smaller than, right? We're viewing our photos smaller than the prints we used to get years ago. 4x6 was the 3x5 and 4x6 was the standard. So I don't know. It's just it's just interesting when you look at it that way, from the way that we've changed and access our media and look at it. On the flip side, we take small 8mm film and we blow it up to HD to make it look better. So it's kind of opposite, right?
And we share, the pictures that you take are no longer confined to a photo album that sits on your shelf. I mean, we are truly able to share our pictures with the world now.
Yes.
In where before it was, always something that was just personal to us. Yeah. Perhaps so.
Well, don't forget there was the slideshow or the home movie thing. You would have a show at home. Whenever we go on a trip, our friends will come over. How was your trip? I'm like, great. We got a 3-hour production of slideshows. We're dimming the light shortly. They all laugh. But that's what you would do. That's how you shared that. You're right. The album was a memory, and now everything's just lost in the cloud if you don't organize it. So. But, gentlemen, wow, this has been quite a journey of all sorts of technical, fun, photographic memories. And we went from the photo center and just some shops to down into the technical and the social aspects of taking photos on phones. So, but yeah, maybe there's somebody out there that has all the shots they took on old digital camera. We'd love to see some BlackBerry photos of Walt Disney World. That would be great.
I think, for me, the takeaway of this is like you have an incredible array of technologies at your disposal.
Yeah.
To capture the memories of your trips at Disney. So do that. Go make sure when you're going, you're not leaving the phone in your pocket. Take pictures of you, take pictures of your friends and your family and the attractions. And you never know what shot that you get, may be important to us because stuff disappears all the time. Attractions disappear, family members disappear as they age, get disease. So capture as much as you can because you just never know when you're going to want to look back at something and experience it again.
And don't forget to take a picture of what you eat.
Yeah, and keep it and organize it. You got to keep it and organize it, otherwise you'll lose it. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for going down this photographic journey. Emulsions and fixer, developer, 110, 35 millimeter. I think we've hit on all the big things. And again, I invite anybody who wants a movie night of just geekiness, and we'll even spray the film guard live. We can clean film live on camera. What do you think about that, Brian?
I think it sounds wonderful.
We'll thread projectors.
It was so funny because I was looking at the calendar about to say, hey, same time next week. And I'm like, I thought we were going to record this episode on Tuesday. And we did start recording this episode on Tuesday. It's just now Wednesday.
Yes, according to my recorder, it's 2 hours and 47 minutes. The family's still up watching a movie. I don't know what they're doing up late. Nobody has early work tomorrow, I guess. But all right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. As always, if you can, give us a shout out on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Possibly Hal might have some sort of maybe Kodak inspired or GAF inspired shirt.
Yeah,
like,
let me
take a picture of me. I'm the photo
making
spot.
memories, man.
Yeah, making memories. Yeah. So I'm sure you can play off photo spot or a yellow shirt with the Kodak logo.
Don't ruin Ma's birthday.
Yeah, all those. But you can, as always, you could also check us out you can get all the information about our t-shirts and logos at retrowdw.com/support us. And real quick, we do have an ornament on sale. We have the 3D ornament from Muppet Vision 3D. It's a simulation of the little movie clapboard, and the 3D goes in and out. Those are going to be shipping in late January, early February. You can get that at lbvhs.org/donate, and we'll be shipping that out soon. So about half of them are sold, so get on that. And we have a couple Fort Wilderness ornaments left as well. And all right, with that, we will see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening, everybody. And with that, Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBV History, and on the web at lbvhistory.org. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com, and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at retrowdw. And follow our hosts, Todd McCartney, on Twitter at WDWMS, Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram at GoAwayGreen, JT Cougar on Twitter at LS1JT, and on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring, and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonpartisan, nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities.